present. The three men walked to the door, paused, stepped aside, and let Clay and Rudy back in. They were followed by two men in uniforms holding rifles pointed downward. Behind them was a man with darker skin, wearing a light blue shirt and khaki pants. He held a handgun but didn't display it aggressively, suggesting he was someone important. He reminded me of the Israelis I had seen during my travels. The handgun was small but dangerous in skilled hands. Despite the situation, I found a reason to smile. One of the uniformed men said, "We just need to talk, so please stay calm. Mr. Secretary, could you please come over, take my identification from my jacket pocket, check it, and introduce us?" Tom walked over with a grin. "I thought you might be involved. What's your name again? Operations Officer?" "Howard, sir. Randy Howard." "Good to see you again, sir. This is Case Officer Julian Estes, and that gentleman is from another agency." I smiled, too. "Shalom Aleichem, Agent Score. Nice to see you as well." He glanced at me with surprise that turned into a small smile. "Aleichem Shalom, Mr. McGregor. It's good to be here, though I see you have questions about why I'm here." The CIA agents lowered their rifles once they confirmed their identities. Officer Estes suggested we move to a glass-walled room that seemed like an office. We went in and learned it was designed to block out any listening devices. Clay checked the room and reported it was secure. "I would love to chat, but we're short on time. We've been monitoring this location for months. Mr. McGregor, the person you're buying from is indeed the owner, but there are others involved as well. I can't share who they are, but we'll inform them when we move the weapons. We don't want them coming back here. We won't share details about the buyers either, but they are local and have significant plans. You will find out more about this later, but right now, we need you to stay quiet and go about your day as usual." He glanced at his watch and said, "In about 21 minutes, trucks will arrive. You need to move the Suburbans blocking the road. While our team is unloading some crates, your team will handle the bodies at a spot we talked about before. It's close to a small spring, where the ground is soft. Julian will show your men how to bury them carefully, so no one will find them easily. Please keep all your men away from here except for those needed for the burials, and anyone you believe is necessary for our safety if something goes wrong. Sheriff Goodson, that includes you, your deputy, and the secretary. No offense, but I must remind everyone that keeping this quiet could help keep you safe. Once we're gone, please try to return to your normal lives and act like this never occurred. Your time will come, just not yet. Mr. Secretary, as soon as you leave here, you will confirm our mission. Here are 3 men you can contact who know about it. You know and trust them. Please do not reach out to anyone else as this operation is sensitive and fast-paced. Any questions?" We exchanged glances, but I asked, "So, do I really own this land and the other ranch, or did I waste my money?" "No, sir, you bought it from the legal owner. He likely left for Ecuador or Zimbabwe by now, but he signed all the documents yesterday. You are the new owner. Now it's best for everyone to leave before the trucks arrive. I know I shouldn't have to say this, but make sure everyone here understands that this never happened." We all stood up, shook hands, and then Clay asked, "What about the helicopters?" "They are not included. We don't want anything that is not needed. But I would move them somewhere and change them a bit before using them, got it?" Clay's eyes brightened. He nodded and then turned to me. I winked, and he laughed. 3 men and a backhoe dug a grave according to the plan, placed the bodies carefully, covered them, and adjusted the runoff from the spring to keep the ground moist. It seems that moist ground is hard enough that special equipment won't easily detect what's buried beneath. Good to know, because you never know when this information might be useful. We sent everyone else back to the ranch, while Clay, Claude, Felix, Rudy, and I took our positions on the ridge overlooking the ranch. We had radios for communication, as did our colleague back at the lair, who was monitoring radar for any planes or helicopters. The truck convoy that soon arrived from 3 different directions was quite impressive, and the way they handled the equipment was done quickly and efficiently. Well before dawn, the trucks were leaving and going in different directions, and the lights in the first warehouse flashed on and off 3 times. We made our way back to the Suburban, and then to the warehouses, which were now empty. Claude's voice echoed in the quiet building. "I would have liked to keep some of the anti-tank missiles, a few RPGs, and a couple of the SAMs, just in case." "Oh, well." We all laughed in agreement, and I asked, Does anyone need coffee? This has been a short night, but I know today will be long. Chap's coffee and Maria's breakfast helped us get moving. No one asked questions, which meant they understood whatever we did all night was a secret. Claude went down to the control room to figure out what just happened without raising any alarms. Tom texted that he and the sheriff were going to sleep at the jail and would meet us for a late lunch. He wrote, "Legit," so I assumed his contacts confirmed everything was fine. Clay wanted to discuss the helicopters. I suggested he call Paul to find out what we needed to do to get them ready for our use. That conversation was interesting since Clay couldn't speak openly for fear of someone listening in. It ended with Paul saying he was on his way for some rest at the Old Crystal Bar in Alpine and would stop by to say hello, likely arriving around noon. Ron came to my office soon after Clay left to let me know that the sale was complete, and the ranches were now mine. "Is there anything I should know?" he asked. "It's probably for the best if you don't," I replied. He nodded and turned to leave. I stopped him, asking, "Would you like to take a quick trip to the Crescent Moon? I've never been in either of the houses, and I'd like to see them." "I'll drive, you don't look too tired," he said. I didn't feel great either. The main house was well built and spacious, furnished with sturdy Spanish-style furniture. Aside from its location, it seemed easy to defend. I wasn't a fan of its position in a bowl surrounded by hills, but I thought it could be well protected with the right equipment on the nearby hills. I could see why it appealed to Claude. It had 6 bedrooms with bathrooms, a large basement with a dozen bunk beds, and a big bathroom with multiple toilets and showers. It could accommodate many people comfortably. There were 3 bedrooms in one part of the house, including the main bedroom, which was just right for his growing bond with Eva and her children. In the basement, there was a special room filled with electronics, like a top-notch security system, powerful computers, and communication devices. Our tech experts would need to check this out to ensure everything was okay, but it looked amazing. I realized I got a better deal than I expected, and I felt like I had really scored. I shouted, "Thank you, Ron." He smiled and responded with, "You're welcome." The smaller house was my favorite. It was well built, nicely decorated, and had enough space for a family with 4 bedrooms and 4.5 bathrooms. The main area included a large kitchen, dining area, and living room, along with a big covered porch that had a hot tub on one side, similar to what I had seen at the Mountain Lair. Ron guided me through every room in both houses, giving me a lot of detail. I let him go on while I kept moving if he started to linger. After seeing the smaller house, I mentioned I wanted to check the warehouses again to think about the keypads. Ron said Claude had asked him to confirm if the house plans were right and that the big house could be used for ultimate solutions. I sent him back and walked over to the first warehouse. At the open door, I noticed a sticky note with 6 numbers and instructions for changing the code. How did I miss that last night? Was it put there after we left? Am I being watched? Is this a trick? Should I keep going or walk away? I decided to take a chance. I shut the door and followed the instructions. The keypad worked perfectly. The door buzzed and opened. I was relieved we didn't damage the pads as we had planned. I walked around the warehouse, entered the office, and examined what was inside. There were 2 laptops, a server, a router, and feed from the security cameras displayed on 3 large screens. Some items were unfamiliar, and I didn't think it was wise to touch them. As I looked around the warehouse, keeping an eye on the security screens, I assured myself that I was still alone. I sat down in the executive chair and checked the drawers of the desk. The screen showed nothing but the empty space and Ron moving around the big house, so I took a deep breath and thought, why not? I pressed the hidden button under the desk that I had found the night before while sitting there. I had no idea what to expect: a loud alarm, a security alert, or something else entirely, but I was surprised by what happened next. The desk I was sitting at, along with the couch nearby, began to lower. What was happening? Half of the office was some kind of elevator. As surprising as that was, realizing there was another floor below the warehouse amazed me even more. And what was down there was shocking. At first, I couldn't see much. It was dark, with only a little light coming down from above. I saw a shiny object on the wall that looked like a light switch about 10 feet away. I got off the lift, walked over, and flipped the switch. The lights turned on, and the lift started going back up. My pause meant I was still below, and I needed to figure out how to get out after I looked around a bit. This floor was smaller than the main one, and I found another lift in the back corner. I tried to remember what was above this level. Maybe it was the freight scale. I decided to try using it once I calmed down and finished checking things. I moved along one wall, then up one of the two middle aisles, down the other aisle back to the wall, and returned to the lift in the corner. I quickly noticed there was a machine with a big red button on it. I got on the lift and pressed the button. The floor above lowered and moved down, while the lift rose to take its place. I quickly sent Claude an urgent email. "Come to the moon? Want to talk about using the space here?" He replied right away. "See you in 30. Ron was getting anxious about lunch, so I told him to go back and that I would ride with Claude, who was on his way. Ron left, and soon Claude and Clay arrived. I waved them toward the warehouse. The Edwards brothers looked confused when I asked them to come in through the freight doors. They seemed even more puzzled when I stopped them inside. As the floor moved down, Clay asked, "What on earth?" I smiled at him. "You should be careful what you wish for, my friend. You just might get it." When the lift stopped, I gestured around the large room and said, "Ta-da!" If anyone had been there, they would have been surprised. Claude stuttered, "Rob, this isn't what I think it is, right?" "Well, if you think it's about 1/3 of what was stored upstairs, then yes, it is." "What do we do now?" he asked, looking bewildered. It was a good question. Maria had set up a taco bar again, something she liked to do when we had a lot of guests, like today. It was as tasty as usual, and we all ate too much, even before she brought out the flan. After lunch, I invited Tom to the command center, told Chap and Coyote to show Paul around, and motioned for Clay and Claude to join us. Tom was impressed by the bunker and our tech equipment, and was a bit taken aback by our serious expressions when we all sat down. I explained what we had found and asked for his thoughts on what to do next. He looked thoughtful, then gazed at the ceiling. The contact I spoke with confirmed the operation and mentioned the inventory had been logged and moved. When Clay asked Howard about the helicopters, Howard said they were not listed, so they remained. I might be talking nonsense, but I don't think their wording was an accident. I shook my head to clear my thoughts and repeated, "So the CIA and Mossad know what's down there and are leaving the items for us? That makes no sense. We could start a big change with that much power." Tom took a deep breath and slowly exhaled. "Or stop one." Oh, no. We didn't come up with a solid plan right away. We felt tired and a bit confused. Clay took Paul to check the helicopters. Starting them felt risky until we knew for sure they didn't have tracking devices. They found a vehicle and wheels for the skids inside the hangar, so they moved them carefully inside and started to inspect them. Tom reached out to another contact who said almost the same thing. The inventory has been retrieved and is confirmed. This made Tom decide to stay overnight, so Gatto offered him a bedroom and informed his team they would sleep in the bunker with the other group. Claude called in our tech experts from San Antonio to check the electronics at the Crescent Moon, and I managed to chat with the kids before I finally went to bed. They could thank their lucky stars for Eva and their uncles, or they would have had to go to bed really early tonight. I slept soundly until about 5 a.m. when I woke up full of energy. Maybe it was adrenaline, worry, and fear. After 2 cups of strong coffee, my worry and fear turned into a kind of excited confusion. I was amazed that we seemed to have received all that equipment, but scared about what that meant. Why were they generous? And what did they expect from us? We'd need to hire a lot of people to use everything down there. Then it hit me. Should we involve the Brotherhood? Is that what this is about? Are we supposed to become some kind of team out here in the desert? Why? I paced back and forth on the patio, trying to figure it out, while Tom, Paul, the Edwards family, and the uncles sipped coffee and watched me. There were hints of light on the eastern horizon, but it was still dark. I turned, walked over to Tom, and asked, "The Brotherhood?" He shrugged. "It makes sense, or at least as much as anything else." "Do we start now, or is that too rushed?" He seemed calm as he nodded. "Time is running out." "What about the sheriff?" "Not yet. Let's figure out what we have before involving him." I expected surprise at the situation, but all I got were knowing nods from the others. I shook my head, looked up at the sky for answers, and spread my arms, palms up. How is it that I don't understand what everyone else seems to know and accept? Doc cleared his throat. "I can't guess without knowing more, but this country is facing big problems. There are talks of splitting apart. Some politicians from Texas and other southern states are supporting this idea. Many groups are preparing for possible conflicts, and there is a lot of activity from various extreme groups, both on the right and left. We even have issues with foreign spies. Our society is very divided. How many members of the Brotherhood belong to these groups? I asked. Not many, if any. Remember the training and oaths? We carefully check people before they join and continue to evaluate them later. What about Tom? I know more about your local militia than the Brotherhood, but I remember being told they are true patriots who believe in America, not extremists. Does that sound right? Yes, that seems correct. And I believe the militia members share those values. Then how many do we have? He asked. I looked around. Clay answered, about 38 in the militia, not counting the Border Patrol officers. By the way, General Yonkers, someone in that command worked with the Escamilas. The Border Patrol was supposed to help when they raided the desert lair, but someone above my rank stopped them, according to their commander in El Paso. I'll look into that. I've been suspicious of ICE. It has become very political, and there are claims of issues at the top. Does anyone know how many members the Brotherhood has? I shrugged. Paul said, currently 106 with 11 in training. I turned my attention back to him. So how far up are you? Not nearly as far as my boss. I agree with the general, they are true patriots. 11 in training is quite a lot, but many have returned home after serving and are worried about what is happening here. We could have a couple of hundred training, but checking all the applicants for stability takes time and effort. If we had more support, we could grow our numbers in 6 months. New members are excellent at bringing in others they trust. And Rob, the air support was not a coincidence. That sheriff has more influence than me. Wow, I've really been out of the loop. I need to get out more. So, should we involve the sheriff after all? They laughed in reply. Paul, Clay, Tom, and Coyote went to the bunker to plan. Claude and I spent time with the kids and put them into the armored Suburban with the green team. Their security teams have names based on the school colors of green and gold. The gold team had gone ahead to ensure the path was clear. Nothing was left to chance. It was interesting to see the relationship growing between the confirmed bachelor and the strong warrior mom who was also a doctor. At first, Claude watched her from afar, but she noticed. When he took longer to make a move, she stepped in. They started with light flirting and deep talks, moved to playful teasing and gentle touches, then discussed kids and future plans before sharing soft kisses. By then, Claude was smitten, and their bond was heading toward marriage. After Claude helped them into the SUV, he kissed Ava and waved goodbye as they drove off. Only then did he join the planning session. I returned a call from my contact in Budapest, who was eager to get things started. He assured me that the government would cooperate as long as we were fair with our offer. We outlined a preliminary plan and agreed to talk again in 3 days. If all went well and the finances worked out, he expected to meet me with the necessary documents in 2 weeks. I called CCM Leaded, but found out the project had been moved up to their parent company, Capital Oil and Gas Recovery. I had a new contact, Albert Al Varga. I was excited about the changes. The company seemed committed, and the country was welcoming. After introductions and some reassurance, I shared the details with him. He was as excited as I was and agreed to the terms, pending a formal approval from his operations manager. This project seemed like it would go smoothly, funded by my employers, and I could bring my new assistant along to help her learn about international business. Life was looking good, unless a conflict broke out before we left or during our trip. I went back to the planning session feeling energized, only to be brought back to reality. I'm skilled in many things, but military jargon was not one of them, and it felt like a different language. I sat, listened, and typed an email to Ash letting her know we might leave for a week or two in Budapest on her first day on the job. She responded with a bunch of emojis. What the heck? She's my age, so that's not the issue. I guess I'm just not trendy enough. Or maybe I'm not cool. Ha! I'm definitely not. I can't understand why people can't just use plain words. The emoji seemed happy, so I let it go. The kids got another email from Mom. Yes, they know I can read their emails. I'm their parent, and there are some unsafe people out there. Caitlin's message was cheerful and full of love and questions for her children. Not a word about me or her plans for the future, of course. I guess her only interest in me is that I keep paying for her stay at the retreat. I hope the spa treatments are helping her feel better about me. I do know how I feel about that. Then I started to think about the kids and their mom. We were sitting here planning in case there was trouble outside. Were they safe being here? I asked, but got shrugs in response. I frowned and Tom said, "If only we knew. This could be the safest place around, or it might not be. If it were me with this place and these people, I'd gather supplies and stay put until we know more." That led to a conversation about gathering more food, water, and supplies for a longer time, and a plan for the uncles to make it happen. There were some challenges with getting that much stuff, but they had ideas. Then our small group decided to form a bigger team with members from the Brotherhood and the Terlingua militia, reaching out to them for a meeting. The aim was to discuss adding new things to the annual training. I think there was some secret meaning in how we worded it, because they agreed without question to meet in Fort Davis in 2 weeks. Not that I minded. I wasn't on the team anyway, and I would be in Hungary, with lovely Ashley. That thought kept my mind busy while they worked on ways to make the training better for whatever might come next. My daydream was nice. I've never been involved with someone from work, but if my sudden rule about that didn't apply anymore, I just might. That made me feel a quick twinge of guilt, but I brushed it aside. Caitlin had already made her feelings clear. Why should I feel bad? Just then, I got another call from Hungary, so I stepped away to answer. It was my contact, Ambris Kovac, sharing good updates about his progress. He assured me they would be ready to finalize contracts with COG Recovery in less than 2 weeks. I felt pleased when I talked to Al Varga, which encouraged him to share an interesting fact about himself. His grandparents on both sides of the family came from Debrecen when the Russians started taking over in the 1950s. Debrecen is located in northern Hungary, but Al has relatives all over the country, even in Budapest. His grandparents and parents made sure he learned the language well as a child, and he traveled to Hungary with them when he was younger. He also studied Russian in college, so I believed he was the right person for this job. After all, I knew several Hungarians, and they felt that anyone with Hungarian heritage was still Hungarian, no matter where they grew up. His background would certainly help us as we worked on the contracts and licenses. Al promised to take this to higher-ups and speed it up. I knew this would be a great opportunity for him, so I wasn't worried about his commitment. The 2 calls made me feel excited, and I wanted to share my joy with someone, so I called my assistant Toby on her cell. She answered right away. 2 years working with you and I've not received a single call. Now I get 2 in a week. What brings this on? I wanted to let you know that the trip to Budapest is likely happening. We will have to learn on the go, but I would love for you to come with me. It will be an exciting chance to learn about international business and European governments in one trip. Little did I know. Ashley wanted to know more about the schedule and what kind of clothes she would need. I told her the schedule was being worked out by our hosts, but based on past experiences, we could expect a business meeting every day or two, at least one formal evening event, and a couple of dinner meetings, possibly with important government officials. I explained that a lot would depend on whether they wanted to promote this partnership as beneficial for their country, or downplay American involvement because of their Russian trade partners. As for the other time, dress would be casual around the hotel and while we explored the city. The weather should be similar to ours, so we wouldn't need heavy jackets. She asked me to explain what was expected for the formal events and dinners. I told her it wouldn't be much different from what she might see in Washington, D.C. or New York City. She quickly reminded me that she grew up and went to college in West Texas and had worked in Texas, so she didn't have experience with formal events like those in D.C., NYC, or even around the Capitol in Austin. I needed to be clearer about what to expect. I promised I would do my best, and she could ask me anything. She joked that it might be better to talk to a friend for a woman's opinion. Once that was settled, she asked how she could get ready for her new role. I laughed and asked if she had a social life because I figured someone like her would have many options and wouldn't be looking for extra tasks. She didn't laugh. Her voice sounded serious. I don't go on dates, except for work events that need a companion. My previous relationship has made me wary of men and relationships. Of course, that doesn't include you. If you don't mind me asking. He was charming and good-looking but unfaithful. I was so trusting that it took me 2 years to realize what he was doing. That was a while ago, and I've learned my lesson. I understand. I've been through something tough too, but my experience was very different, and there were children involved. Now that we've shared that, I will send you some necessary information. I hope you have a secure email? She did. I prepared some documents, scanned them, and sent them, curious about how quickly she would read them all. Learning that she had been divorced for 2 years, didn't date, and was cautious about men made me think about her personal life. It seemed odd that she hadn't been with anyone during that time. I spent most of the day in my office until Felix stopped by. 90 minutes later, I felt excited the kids were coming home, giving me a reason to take a break from work. He reminded me that skipping workouts, especially at the beginning, only leads to more discomfort in the long run. By the end of the day, I could tell he was right about the discomfort part. I wished for fewer interruptions so I could better focus on getting fit and improving my skills. The kids excitedly shared their emails from their mom, even though it was the same message, followed by stories from their school day. Their enthusiasm was uplifting. They seemed to enjoy their lessons a lot. I promised myself to attend the next parent-teacher meetings to meet the amazing women who were influencing my children positively. After I tucked them in, I stepped onto the porch, stretched, and relaxed in the hot tub. I felt surprised at how sore I was after only a short workout. I needed to push myself more and stop using my past injuries as an excuse to avoid getting in shape. You never know when you might need to go on an adventure or defend yourself. I went to bed early and slept soundly, waking up before dawn feeling sore all over. What should I do now? I wondered to myself. Should I go get coffee and start the day, or... I put on my running shoes and workout clothes, stretched on the patio, waved to the guard at the house, and began jogging along the road. I was happy with how easily I made it to the gate, until I looked back and realized the road back was all uphill. I caught my breath as I cooled down, then went to get coffee. Paul was smiling when I reached the table. Remember, Felix just trained 18-year-olds, not people in their 30s. He might give you a tough time if you're not careful. The term older gentleman made everyone laugh, but they agreed with his warning. Maybe I should be careful, but I wanted to be ready for Felix's challenge. I was not backing down. Despite that, he allowed me 6 hours to handle business, then worked me hard until I felt like giving up. Still, I made it through to take a shower before meeting up with the kids. Before I left the gym, I reminded him that tomorrow is Saturday, and I'm taking the kids and anyone else who wants to join to Balmorhea. No workouts for me. It's still hot for September, but I want one last trip to the biggest natural spring-fed pool before it gets cooler, I told him. He chuckled and said he would come too, so we could swim a few laps since we'd miss our usual workout. Eva was excited, the kids were thrilled, the uncles were happy, and nearly everyone on our security team volunteered to help. They had to pick cards to see who would stay behind to make sure everything was safe. We would look like a big group of travelers, although not all our vehicles were black. I figured it would be a fun day out. Planning the picnic meant we needed to run to the local grocery store, and then we all got busy in the kitchen making potato salad, ceviche, and fresh salsa. You wouldn't think hot dogs and sausage wraps would need much planning, but Eva and Claude had other ideas. The rest of us decided on popcorn and a movie or two after baths and getting into pajamas. I settled in the middle of the big couch, with Tavo and Doss on one side and Esme and Grace on the other. After some discussions and my promise to record the movies everyone wanted to see soon, we picked Dora the Explorer and the Lost City of Gold, and How to Train Your Dragon, The Hidden World. Eva and Claude joined us on the love seat to watch the dragon training. Like me, they mostly enjoyed watching the kids laugh, squeal, and hide their faces during the exciting parts. The way they had grown close and felt like family was a bit surprising. It made people wonder why this was happening, since they didn't share much beyond their time spent together. After putting the kids to bed, the 3 adults thought about this fact before deciding to accept their bond as something natural. The water at Balmorhea Springs was a refreshing 76 degrees, not too cold like the 68-degree water at Barton Springs, or the 71-degree water in the San Marcos River. It was nearly perfect. Eva and the kids squealed when they first jumped in, and even more when the small fish started to nibble at them. Felix let me play with the kids and show off on the diving boards. I was able to do some impressive dives, which made the kids cheer for me. He also helped me teach the kids some swimming safety tips. Afterward, he suggested we swim laps together for fun. We kept going back and forth in the long pool until I was quite tired when the whistle blew for lunch. The swimming was helping my legs and breath, but showed me that I needed to work on my arms. Felix just smiled as if to say, "I told you so." We relaxed under the shade of the cottonwood trees for about an hour after lunch. The kids, who had just claimed they were not tired, soon fell asleep while dreaming of swimming. There were other families at the pool, but they kept to themselves, likely cautious of our lively and active group. The kids chatted and played with some other kids in the water, but their parents seemed unsure about letting them join us. I understood why, even if the kids didn't. Around 4, I received a text from Ash. She wanted more information for her studies. I couldn't help but think if her thirst for knowledge was as strong as her personal desires. I felt a bit guilty for seeing her in a different light since she was a friend's daughter. I told her where I was and mentioned I would share more once I returned. I also suggested she check the company website for the public view we present. She sent a sad face emoji and said, "Wish I was there, love that wonderful place," followed by hearts and stars. I couldn't help but chuckle. Many Texans regard any large swimming area or BBQ spot as a hidden treasure. Actually, Valmerhea is indeed a refreshing paradise in the desert. To everyone's surprise, Tom arrived on Sunday with a mystery guest and a big security team. They called after arriving and said they were headed to the house. They suggested that we should have a meeting with the planning team and the sheriff. He introduced his companion, saying, "This is my friend, Don." Don nodded at us, keeping a serious look on his face. I didn't know who he was, but it seemed clear he wasn't just another office worker from Washington. Our serious guest led the meeting. He was organized and direct, not holding back his views on the situation. I wondered if he really worked for the U.S. government, like Tom suggested, or if he was part of a secret group. He definitely had a military background, but he spoke like he belonged on a conspiracy website, not as a representative of an official agency. To me, he seemed quite unusual, but everyone else appeared to accept his strange ideas without question. It felt like I needed to get out more. He explained the situation as if he were telling a complex story, and then he described our duties, those of the Brotherhood, Terlingua Militia, and Ultimate Solutions. In short, we were to control the Bend, stop any military threat from the south, west, or northwest, and keep our command informed. That was a big area, bigger than some New England states, but he reassured us that with our new equipment, we could handle anything the rebels might do. This would allow our other troops and the military to focus on more crowded areas that might be in danger. He continued by explaining that the focus on far west Texas was because of its closeness to the border and some groups of patriots that were part of a larger plan to disrupt and take down the government. He didn't say much more except to tell us to assess our resources and inform Tom if we needed anything else. After finishing, they got ready to leave around 2 o'clock. I pulled Tom aside, looked him in the eyes, and said, "Tom, all of this is a lot to take in. It feels like something out of an old TV show like Revolution or The Twilight Zone. I need you to promise me that we're not getting pulled into a plan to disrupt the government." Tom is a tough negotiator and is likely skilled at deception, considering how high he climbed in the military and government, but I sensed truth in his voice and eyes as he reassured me that this was real and urgent. I sighed, wished him well, nodded at Don, and watched them leave in their fancy plane. Just before they took off, Don looked back at me and said, "Check your phone before you do the inventory." After they left, I checked my phone but saw no new messages or emails. I walked back to our planning team, stood behind my chair, and said, "Wait a second. I have an important question before we continue. Do you all believe this? I feel like we're being tricked. This isn't the 1770s. There are no Tories and patriots here, and I haven't heard about any rebellions going on. Convince me, or I'm leaving." The next hour was really intense for me, but it made me realize how sheltered I had been. With my time split between my work in Hungary and the situation in the United States, the days flew by. The Brotherhood and the Terlingua Militia didn't need my help, so I focused on my projects in Hungary. Ash finished her job 2 days early, visited my parents, and then joined me at the lair. After a warm introduction to my amazed friends and my kids, Eva and her children were there too. The kids adored the woman Grace compared to Snow White, and Ash went with them to see their rooms. Eva looked at me strangely, so I asked, "Why are you giving me that look, Eva? Ashley is the new assistant that you all said I needed." "Sure, but what makes her right for the job besides her looks?" she asked with suspicion. I quickly went over Ash's background, noting she had efficiently managed one of my investment portfolios for 2 years and that I knew her parents well. Ava relaxed a little after that, even though Claude and Clay kept smirking. Coyote made things more awkward when he walked by and said, "Well, Claude wasn't kidding. He may have even downplayed it. I'd say she's a solid 14 out of 15, but I like tall women." Ava jumped in, being direct. "So is this Caitlin's replacement? Are you not even going to give her a chance when she gets back?" "Again, Eva, Ashley is great for this role. My recruiter called her the perfect candidate, and her boss praised her problem-solving skills. You and Claude told me I needed an assistant, and I found the best one available. As for Caitlin, I've only heard from her once since she went away, and that was just to ask the kids to reach out to me if they needed help with emails. No calls, no texts, nothing to let me know she doesn't blame me for everything that's happened to her. I think that's behind us, don't you?" That reality check made her pause, but she pressed on. "You don't get what it feels like to be in that situation, feeling so powerless and facing threats. It's going to take time, but she will heal. Will you be there for her when she's ready?" Her last words felt more like a challenge than a question. I probably shouldn't have shrugged and said, "She didn't mind ruining my life and walking away 6 years ago or even 6 months ago. I guess we'll see if she comes back at some point." Ava marched off. Claude shook his head and followed her, while Clay smiled. "You're putting your foot in your mouth today, boss. Maybe you should take a break from talking to the good doctor. No one will believe she is what you claim until they get to know her, so stop being defensive. Also, Caitlin asked about you once, so that makes 2 times, he added. "In 6 months?" I replied, a bit annoyed. He laughed and pointed to the stairs where Ava was walking down, with the kids following her like she was a leader. He told me to be quiet and went to join them, reminding everyone that dinner was in 10 minutes. Ashley's new group came over to say she would be sitting with us at dinner. She smiled at the kids, and I couldn't help but think about how Eva would react. With the kids ignoring Eva and surrounding Ashley, I saw the response I expected, and it was hard not to smile. It was even tougher when they insisted Ashley sit in my spot on the couch for movie night. Claude and Eva were on the love seat, while I relaxed in the recliner. We were watching the long-awaited sequel to Frozen. Ava was acting like the icy queen, and my smiles probably didn't help. When the movie ended, she hurried the kids upstairs, saying, "No, I don't need any help," before putting them to bed. Ashley asked if she did something wrong, but Claude and I assured her that she hadn't. Eva was just having a rough night. Luckily, since we weren't flying out until early Monday, Ashley was here for the weekend. By Sunday evening, she had impressed the men with more than just her looks, and Eva had started to warm up. Her intelligence, skills, sense of humor, and kind spirit shone through, winning everyone over. Still, I caught another look from Clay when he loaded us and his chosen friends into the SUV to take us to the airport Monday morning at 7:30. As we drove, I wondered what Ava expected from me. I hope I won't just sit around waiting for Caitlin to decide if I am her hero or her worst fear. The last 14 months before the kidnapping were mostly good, even if we could have done without the fights and trouble. But I'm not going to let her hurt me again. She came close last time. I made it through that, learned how to live without her, and I can do it again, especially since I have the kids and plan to keep them. While she may be relaxing with her therapist and personal trainer, she is also building my case for keeping the kids because of her ongoing mental health issues. To backtrack a little, on Friday night after the kids were asleep, we had a short meeting on the patio to talk about whether to involve Ash and Eva in our plans. Both had been carefully considered due to their closeness and roles in our group, and they were found to be trustworthy. The bigger question was how they would respond to the invitation. It is possible to be a good person and a patriot without wanting to be part of our current situation. Neither hesitated as Clay, Claude, Ron, and Doc explained everything. They asked great questions, and once we answered them all, they said with confidence that they were in. I also learned that Ashley's dad was part of the group. So, on Saturday morning, Ron, Clay, Claude, Eva, Ashley, and I went to Crescent Moon to assess the situation. Ultimate Solutions, Limited, wanted to rent the main house and one warehouse for any price I decided. The Brotherhood would rent the other warehouse and the hangar under a name they would choose, again for a price I set. Rapidly expanding? Yes, it seems an anonymous donor was helping us screen potential recruits thoroughly, and, as Paul predicted, the group would likely double in size in a few months, and then possibly double or triple again after that. I wondered if we had that much time, but understood the importance of careful screening. Having someone untrustworthy among us would be a disaster. Ultimate Solutions also had support from an anonymous donor who was paying for 24 more positions for the next 2 years. Clay and Claude were using the same careful screening and had added 3 more people to speed things up. It looked like they would have a full team of skilled military operatives in about a month, with some of the new hires likely able to help with specialized training. The company needed space nearby to accommodate staff and set up a top-notch training center with the Brotherhood. The Crescent Moon provided good housing, basic facilities, and room for more, while the empty land of the 6,400 ranch, named by Ashley, had plenty of space for training exercises. This was especially true if I decided to accept an offer from the Texas Air National Guard to use part of it as a practice area for flights, which would allow for some loud activities. The 2 large sections of land to the south and north were owned by a man and a woman who were part of the Brotherhood, giving us a total of 14,000 acres to work with. It wasn't as much as Fort Bliss, but I was told it would be enough for what we needed. I didn't think the higher-ups were worried about my decision to accept the leases, because plans were already underway to build a runway at the Crescent Moon. The runway would be improved and made longer, with new taxiways and hangars added. The funding was coming from another secret source, so we weren't short on money. There were also plans to create a living space, similar to those used in the oil industry during new projects. This would consist of double-wide trailers set up near the second warehouse, with funds already saved up at the local bank. We learned that someone experienced in the oil industry would oversee the development once everything was agreed upon. I chuckled at the thought, once the agreements are signed. I felt out of control after we interrupted the weapon transfer and was now depending on the Edwards brothers, the sheriff, and a few others to handle things right. Honestly, I didn't really need the land or buildings. I had bought them on a whim, but now they seemed useful for other important needs. Sometimes I felt like a generous person buying land for conservation, and at other times like a landlord losing property to a big shopping center. The only things holding me back from signing were many legal issues that needed to be figured out, including contracts and tax concerns. I was counting on Monroe Carr and his team for legal help, and Ashley offered to work with him on the contracts and taxes. She sounded sure of herself, so I decided to follow her suggestion and focus on the one place that still needed attention. The smaller house. It was too nice to leave empty. Maybe my uncles would want to use it instead of making long trips back to town and over the mountains to Ron's place. Or Ashley. What about Caitlin if she ever came back? And there were Claude, Eva, and her kids, too. Well, maybe when I get back from Europe, things will be clearer. I sighed and went outside when my phone chimed. The message read, 2WH 6,425,891,370 inches. What does this mean? I stared at it, realizing it must be from Dawn. But I had no clue what it was about. Just then, the sheriff showed up, eager to take us on a tour of the 6,400 ranch. He promised that he knew things about the place that we should know. We got into a large vehicle, and what was supposed to be a short tour ended up taking 3 hours. He was right. We learned some important things. I had no idea what plans the people we interrupted had, but it wasn't just a simple operation. When we got back to the gate, we were across the street from the way to the lair. I insisted on dropping everyone off before taking Sheriff Goodson back to his truck. Clay was driving, and I noticed a concerned look on his face before he said he would drive to ensure we had extra safety. We dropped everyone off, and I took the passenger seat while the sheriff sat behind Clay, and we headed out. As we drove down the ramp, I read the strange message and said I thought it was from Dawn, asking for their opinions on what it meant. We talked about it during the 5-mile drive to the Crescent Moon. Once there, I told Clay to go to the door of the second warehouse. We stood at the keypad, and before he could enter the usual code, I stopped him and input the 10 digits from the message. The door opened, and we stepped inside. The button to open the door from the inside was lit up. They looked puzzled, so I pressed the button. The door shut and locked, and the floor began to lower. Sheriff Goodson reached for the light switch, and we saw a space that was a bit larger than the gym in the first warehouse. Steel shelves lined with big boxes filled the east and south walls, and more large boxes were on pallets between the center aisles. The most striking feature was the rockets of different sizes standing in rows along the north wall. They varied in size, but all looked impressive. The boxes were in 6 colors. Assuming they were labeled by color, we decided to open one box of each color. With the help of Clay, the sheriff, and our phones, we figured out what kinds of weapons were here. On the north side of the center aisle, there were 5 rusty boxes that held launchers for a Russian-made anti-tank missile system called the Kornet M. Across the aisle, we found 15 orange boxes that contained a new type of missile. Clay looked them up on his phone and discovered that they could hit targets from 5 kilometers away, and they were also dangerous for buildings and military positions. This was a shocking revelation for us. We wondered where an enemy could possibly get tanks. In navy-colored boxes, we saw Soviet RPG-7S with their supplies packed in light blue boxes. Some were for attacking armored vehicles, while others were designed for use against troops. The dark red boxes held 12, 7mm DSK machine guns which were mounted on wheels. Even though this design is quite old, they remained very effective against both troops and vehicles. Light red boxes stored belts of ammunition for these guns. Along one wall, there was a mix of surface-to-air missiles, with some on stands and others designed to be carried by hand, known as man-pads. The collection of weapons and munitions in the 2 large underground rooms showed we had a wide range of military equipment. It was a serious reminder of the warnings we had received. That night, I had trouble sleeping. I was considering an offer on a small ranch with a nice house near Lake Buchanan. I needed to check how safe that area was compared to Fort Davis and perhaps increase my offer. The safety of the kids was my main concern. On Sunday, we took the children to church mass since Ava was Catholic and then went to lunch at Poco Mexico, located outside of town on the way to Balmerhea. The food was not as good as at Maria's, but it was still decent. On our way out, the kids noticed the Fort Davis National Historic Site. So 10 of us decided to visit the partially restored Frontier Fort after lunch. We started by watching a video and exploring the museum before wandering around the large site, applying what we had learned to what we saw. At a restored officer's kitchen, we were offered genuine biscuits. This area was on the west side, near cliffs that shaped a horseshoe around the springs at the base of the cliff. The springs fed a small creek that ran through the fort, leading us to talk about how the fort protected itself from potential threats and the large area they had to monitor. The nearest forts were Fort Stockton and Fort Lancaster to the east, and Fort Quitman and Fort Bliss to the west. Fort Stockton was about 100 miles away through tough paths, and it was even farther to the western forts. The area they needed to watch over was larger than many states. We were taken on tours of some old buildings that had been fixed up. We learned about the real furniture from that time and how both soldiers and the officers' wives lived. At the end of the day, a bugler played a call to gather the soldiers at the parade ground, which was another special moment. After talking to Sheriff Goodson about how safe the lake was, I sent a message to the realtor with my new offer for the Lake Buck property. I also asked if she knew a good builder. Luckily, her brother and brother-in-law were just what I needed. They would work quickly and do a good job. I spent the rest of the afternoon talking about the safety of the 4 children with the Edwards brothers, the sheriff, Tom Yonkers, Paul Paveto, and Eva. We all agreed that based on what we knew, any possible rebellion was months away. If it happened sooner, the bunker would be the safest place, especially with our strong air defenses. The whole weekend felt strange, and I went to bed feeling confused. I slept fitfully, aware that tomorrow would bring more uncertainty. Our pilot dropped us off at Midland, where we took a small plane to DFW, then flew Lufthansa to Frankfurt. We changed planes and landed in Budapest 19 hours after leaving Texas. It was shortly after 9 a.m. the next day, and we were all glad I chose business class for such a long trip. Ambrose Kovac met us at the airport and took us to our hotel in a government van. We were staying at a fancy hotel downtown for $114 per room, which helped balance out the airline costs. This was everyone's first visit to the city except Clay, who gave us a brief overview of its history and buildings. He pointed out that Budapest is actually two cities, Buda on the west side of the Danube and Pest on the east. Ambrose took a longer route to the hotel, giving us a mini-tour along the way. We saw buildings from the Roman Empire, the Holy Roman Empire, the Renaissance, and many styles since then, including Gothic and Neo-Gothic. The city is very hilly, has a castle district, and the views of the Danube and Pest are stunning. Ambrose was an excited guide, and his love for his city showed in everything he said. We made a stop at the 1913 Blue Beke Hotel to check in, drop off our luggage, and meet up with Al Varga. He had arrived earlier, traveling from Baltimore around the same time we left Dallas-Fort Worth. Al was excited to see Ambrose, not just as a negotiator, but also as someone with whom he could practice speaking Hungarian. We looked out the windows and let the guides talk until we reached the restaurant. Honestly, the only Hungarian dish I knew was goulash, which was called gulyás on the menu. Our guide suggested we try a variety of dishes and share them. We agreed, so they ordered gulyás, fisherman's soup, chicken paprikash, meat pancakes, stuffed cabbage leaves, meat stew, sour cherry soup, and jokai bean soup. We passed the full plates and bowls around, took some for ourselves, and sent them on. I can't say there were any dishes I didn't like, but I planned to order my own gulyás and chirke paprikas for our next meals. The wines were strong. One was called Bull's Blood, and the other a dessert wine named Tokaji. I could only imagine the headache if someone drank too much of either. We didn't drink much. After all, the meetings were in full swing, and we wanted to give our best. By this time, we were tired from the long journey, so Ambrose took us directly to the hotel. Charlie had checked our rooms quickly while we were putting our bags away before dinner, but he was now carefully inspecting them while we waited silently in one room. Clay gathered all the keys, and then gave each one to a different person than the one who was supposed to have it. We sat quietly until Charlie returned. He pointed at me and Ashley and motioned for us to get our bags and follow him. I was now in a two-bedroom suite that included a king bed and a spacious bathroom, along with a small kitchen, a large table, and a desk. Ashley had the second bedroom in the suite, with one door to the hallway and another leading into the suite. After the changes were made, Felix was on my left, and Charlie was on Ashley's right. Clay and Armando had rooms across the hall from Ashley and Felix, and Al Varga was directly across from me in a one-bedroom suite. Once Charlie finished, he quietly reminded us to be careful in our conversations because he couldn't promise there were no listening devices in the room or that others weren't listening from outside. Clay asked if there were places in the hotel I wanted to use for planning and discussions. Instead of trying to get a conference room, we decided to use my suite. Charlie and Felix examined it carefully and then set up a white noise device we could use to keep our talks private. I was feeling really worn out by then, and we had a meeting scheduled with the Ministry of National Development and the agency responsible for licenses related to mineral exploration and development. The Office for Geology and Mining, known as MBFH, would be the one to issue our licenses, and I was glad they would be there from the start of our face-to-face talks. So far, everything had gone well, but meeting in person was important in Hungary, just like it was everywhere else. It allowed us to build strong connections with the policymakers and the people who put those policies into action. Ashley popped her head in and said, "Good night," just as I walked from the bathroom to the bed. I was thankful I had chosen to wear shorts. I would have felt awkward if I hadn't. Ashley was wearing a light nightgown that wasn't too concealing, and she lingered in my doorway for a moment. I was surprised, and she must have noticed the reaction on my face. After what felt like too long, she giggled and went back to her room. Earlier, she had worn comfortable clothes for traveling, nice pants and a sweater. She had sat behind me on the flight, so this was our first real moment together in over a day. It seemed innocent enough, just a roommate saying goodnight. But her standing there in that gown lingered in my thoughts. The next morning, we met for breakfast at the hotel cafe at 8:30. I was still a bit sleepy, and the others looked the same, but a couple of cups of strong coffee perked us up. I was alert when we headed to the ministry office, which was located near the historic Hungarian Parliament building along the Danube. The deputy minister of the ministry and a senior official at the MBFH greeted us warmly. While they were polite to all of us, they seemed particularly attentive to Ashley, who was dressed in a business suit and heels. However, they quickly realized that Ashley was not just a pretty face, she was confident and capable. Our 2-hour meeting was very productive, thanks in part to Al's local connections and Ashley's charm and smart thinking. She was great at guiding the conversation away from dead ends toward solutions. My reputation as a reliable negotiator who helps everyone come to an agreement also played a role. But the success of the meeting truly came from Ashley and Al's contributions. Throughout those 2 hours, Ashley focused on ideas and solutions, never using her appearance to sway anyone's opinion. That's not to say we weren't sometimes distracted by her, but it was never because she drew attention to herself. Doing that would have hurt our image and given her a reputation we didn't want. It could have led to unwanted invitations for after-hours meetups. Instead, the meeting ended with her earning respect from everyone involved. Yes, we all found her beautiful and interesting, but that was just who she was. It wasn't because of any suggestive behavior. We left with only 2 issues still open. Al stayed quiet until we got to my hotel room, where he felt we were safe. He then shared that COG might be willing to compromise if it meant starting the project sooner. I encouraged him to explain that the funds would stay unused until we had all the necessary papers signed. I compared it to negotiating with a landowner who wanted just a little bit more money per acre, when the first sale would cover that difference easily. Al made his calls while Ash and I discussed the compromises we had made to see if we had overlooked anything important. After looking it over, everything seemed fine, so we considered what to do for the rest of the afternoon and for dinner. Al returned while we were talking about whether we had time for a tour of Buda Castle. He suggested we go on an evening river tour that includes refreshments and a nice meal. That way, we wouldn't feel rushed. We could see the historic sights along the river, and it would give us a preview of the longer ground tour we should plan for another day. That sounded great, so he called his uncle for reservations. As it turned out, the river tour is a family-run business, and we got last-minute tickets. We joked with him about the family ties, but he assured us we would really enjoy it. He then happily changed the subject to share that COG would agree to our points if they could finalize everything this week. That was great news. It seemed like there were no major obstacles left. Based on Al's suggestion, we dressed casually for the boat ride. Ashley wore jeans that fit well and showed off her shape, along with a button-up shirt with one button open, giving us just a glimpse. There was something special about her, the way she moved, the way she looked at you with her bright blue eyes and her clear confidence and intelligence. I didn't have high hopes considering the family connection, but the tour turned out to be even better than Al had promised. The historic buildings along the riverbank made us move from side to side to take in the view. The food was great, and we found a tasty dark Hungarian beer called Dreher Bach. We found out that most Hungarians prefer lighter lagers, which were fine, but I liked the stronger flavor of Dreher Bach more. On the way back in the van, Al had a cheerful group behind him, except for Clay and Felix, who were working and sober. Ashley stood at the doorway to say goodnight. She wore a lavender nightie that looked cute on her and made her seem young and lively. This appearance led to some mixed feelings for me, as I thought about Caitlin, our kids, and the struggles we faced together. The next morning, Al sent the updated offer to the deputy minister, who replied that he would review it and get back to us the following day. With no plans for the day, we decided to take the Buda Castle tour and explore the castle quarter. Buda Castle, established in 1265, was the home to Hungarian kings and sits on Castle Hill. It is surrounded by the Castle Quarter, known for its medieval and Baroque buildings, monuments, and churches, drawing in many visitors. After our guided tour of the castle, along with Al's enthusiastic exploration of the quarter, we could see why it was so popular. If you have never been there, look it up. What is considered old in the U.S. is much newer compared to ancient Buda. The weather was nice, but a bit cool, with a high of 55. The men wore jeans or khakis with sweaters or light jackets, while Ashley chose a black cable-knit sweater over black tights and athletic shoes. Her outfit and shiny black hair earned her the nickname Black Panther from Clay, which translated to Pantera Negra, or just Pantera. It suited her well. She seemed unaware of the attention she received from the men as she walked by, but few could help but glance at her. She engaged in conversations, took pictures, laughed, made jokes, and respected the beautiful surroundings, acting comfortably among us. Even though I was amazed by the history and architecture around me, I found it hard to take my eyes off her. We spent so much time at the bars in the quarter that the on-duty Armando drove us back to the hotel, with Al guiding him, though he was not in the best condition. It was dark and late, and we were tired, so we all went to our rooms to rest. Ashley entered through my door, paused for a moment, and then turned toward hers. I had thought she might be a little tipsy, like me, but she seemed completely clear-headed and bright-eyed. "Rob, I really can't thank you enough for hiring me and for bringing me on this trip. This small-town Texas girl has seen so many new things, new opportunities I never even imagined, and it's all thanks to you." Her gratitude felt genuine, so I took her words seriously. I walked over and reminded her that she had earned both the job and this trip. I also complimented her on how well she had handled herself on her first trip abroad. She smiled warmly, her face lighting up with a mischievous expression. She held out her arms and looked down at her outfit. "So, you don't think I went too far with these clothes? You and Clay were teasing me so much I wasn't sure." I chuckled and reassured her. "I'm pretty sure no guy we met today had any complaints about your outfit," I said, gesturing to her from head to toe. "Though I did notice a few women looking a little jealous." With a playful grin, she stood on her tiptoes, turning slightly to give me a side view, then spun around to show the back. Her outfit, a snug sweater and tights, fit her well and showed off her figure, but she was clearly just having fun with the teasing. She grinned again and said, "But not too much, right? Just casual, like you said." I laughed and shook my head. It was the first time she had openly joked like that with me. With a little smirk, she added, "I'm going to shower and get ready for bed. Want me to come tuck you in and say goodnight?" I smiled and replied, "I think I've got that covered, thanks. I'm a big boy now." As she walked away, I thought I heard her say something under her breath, but the door closed behind her. I shrugged it off and decided to take a shower myself. Afterward, I checked my personal email, found messages from my kids asking how Hungary was, and quickly replied, attaching a few photos I had taken during our tours. I added a short note for each picture and reminded them how much I loved them. Maybe it was the jet lag or the drink, but I fell asleep almost immediately, only to wake up a little while later. I realized someone had joined me in bed. It was clear that the person was female. In the quiet of the night, she softly said, "Rob, I know you're a gentleman, but I've wanted to be with you from the moment I saw you. This is not a woman with her boss. This is a woman so drawn to a man that she is willing to take a risk by getting in bed with him without asking. Rob, are you going to embarrass me, or are you going to give in to what we both want?" she asked. "You are right about how I feel, Pantera. I'm not going to ask you to leave, but we aren't in love, so I won't be loving you like that. Instead, we can discover each other and see where this goes." She smiled, stretched, and moved closer. She rested her leg over his and leaned into him. Lying on her side, he placed his hand on her back and brushed it down her smooth leg. She snuggled closer, craving his touch. He found it hard to resist her warmth, wanting to discover more about her. He turned her onto her back and kissed her as he continued to explore her body with his hands. She felt just as wonderful as she looked. Her skin was soft and smooth, and he couldn't help but touch her. As he kissed along her neck and chest, she reacted to his every movement, showing him how much she enjoyed it. They continued to share gentle touches and kisses, with both of them guiding each other through this new experience. She expressed her feelings through soft sounds and movements, rewarding him with smiles and little gestures when he did something she liked. Her body had many sensitive spots, and every gentle touch brought reactions she couldn't hold back. Unexpectedly, her body reacted strongly as I touched her. Every place I kissed or held seemed to respond intensely. Her hips lifted and she pulled me closer as I continued to explore her. She was highly sensitive, and every movement seemed to heighten her reactions. However, it was clear that her responses were overwhelming, and at one point, it felt like she almost lost control. Her words filled the room as she reached another moment of release, her body trembling. I moved closer, and we came together as she was still catching her breath. The intensity of the moment caught me off guard. She let out a sound that echoed through the room, reminding me of something wild and untamed. It made me realize just how powerful the connection between us was. As we moved in sync, it became clear that she was strong, and the energy she brought to this moment was overwhelming. It was something beyond anything I had ever experienced. Her rhythm was intense, almost like she was giving everything she had, and it felt like a challenge just to keep up with her. I had experienced moments of passion before, but this was on a different level. The intensity, the power, and the energy were beyond what I could have imagined. When it all reached its peak for the second time, it felt like a flood of emotions and sensations. Afterward, when we were able to move again, we left the bed, which had become soaked from the intensity, and made our way to another room. Once under the covers, she simply wanted to rest, content to stay close and quiet. It had been an incredible experience, one that was beyond what I could have expected. The physical connection was undeniable, but I found myself wondering what came next. There was a sense of awe, but the deeper emotions seemed absent, and I wasn't sure if that would change with time. Later, we arrived at the hotel and walked a short distance to a bar Al knew well. There, we met several more people he called cousins. In Tex-Mex culture, primo often refers to any kind of relative, and it seemed the same was true here. They understood Al's plans to start building pipelines and exploring new areas in their country. They were grateful for the jobs it would create. While their support was encouraging, it also made me a bit nervous. Sometimes being in the spotlight is good, but it can also be tricky during negotiations. It really depends on how the government wants to handle things, and if anyone with power has their own interests to protect. An older man named Ferenc Varga stood out to me. He kept a calm face during what I worried might be too early of a celebration. I stayed out of the main discussion while Ashley picked up on my unease. Instead of joining in, she talked to two of her female cousins about the places we had seen and others we should visit. Al and his cousins continued to celebrate, oblivious to our discomfort. A short time later, as everyone at the table chatted, the distinguished gentleman glanced at me and subtly motioned towards the restroom. I nodded just enough to show I understood, stood up, and excused myself. He was still sitting when I left, but quickly joined me at the next restroom stall. "We can talk in here. Will your team ensure we are alone?" he asked. I nodded again. "My new American friend, things are not as they appear. Your contacts in the ministry don't know everything, but they should find out about an issue soon. It's unlikely you will hear anything before the dinner party tomorrow, but maybe the day after. We don't have long to talk because we're being monitored from the building across the street. I want to give you a warning. There is someone important involved now, and he has different plans. Before you move forward with this deal, you will have to discuss everything with him regarding the gas fields and pipeline paths. But the gas fields aren't the main issue, my friend. I hear you did something before to go against a powerful person's wishes, and he seeks revenge. My contacts are trying to find out more without causing suspicion. He is very dangerous. When I learn more, I will let you know. I can assure you that your life is at risk, and mine is too if he finds out I warned you. I take this risk out of respect for Al and for you. Now, we will leave this room as friends and return to the others to laugh and talk until the party wraps up. But afterward, you will need to reconsider your plans here or stay very alert. Your enemy is a powerful and ruthless man, and his influence goes beyond borders." We left the meeting, chatting and laughing about the city as if we were simply enjoying a good day, trying to keep the mood light. We returned to what felt like an early celebration of our success. I was confident we had negotiated a strong deal for both sides, and our hosts seemed to agree. Earlier that afternoon, we were told the agreement was essentially final, and they were planning a dinner party in our honor the next night at the Palace Ballroom. We were informed it would be a formal event, with some high-ranking government officials and many important guests from the private sector expected to attend. This dinner was more than just a business celebration. It was a political one, too. It meant we had gained the support of the country's leadership, which was more than we had hoped for. It felt like a dream coming true. However, Ferenc shattered that illusion in the restroom. His warning was clear: but I knew I had to keep it to myself and figure out how to handle this new danger. According to Ferenc, I was the target. He had made it clear that I was the one at risk. With that on my mind, I put on a cheerful expression and stayed engaged in the conversation, not wanting to raise suspicion or alarm anyone else. Our four-man security team wasn't drinking, staying alert and cautious. But as I tried to split my focus between Ferenc's warning and the current situation, I noticed Ashley watching me carefully, a slight concern in her eyes. I knew I had to keep up appearances, so I did my best to seem relaxed. The party ended within an hour, and on the way back to the hotel, we agreed that the next day would be spent catching up on business or enjoying some free time, depending on individual needs. Although I was preoccupied with Ferenc's warning, Ashley wasn't one to be ignored. As I started my shower, she joined me, making sure we were both clean. It was a playful moment, lightening the mood despite the worries in my mind. We took care of each other, laughing and enjoying the brief distraction from the day's pressures. Afterward, we lay down on the bed, and the moment carried on with laughter and closeness, a much-needed relief from the stress of what was ahead. She reached her limit before I did, feeling the waves of energy from her body several times. After a while, she gently pulled away, needing a moment to recover from the overwhelming sensations. Her entire body seemed to react to every touch, but there was something special about how sensitive she was to everything, making her reactions even more intense. "I know you haven't finished yet, but just give me a minute," she said, catching her breath. "It's been so long since I've been this close to someone, and no one has ever made me feel like this before." I reassured her. "You've got something special, Ashley. I've been with a few people, but none like you. You're full of energy and excitement." She smiled and said, "Once I'm in the moment, I just want more and more." With that, she moved closer again, letting the moment carry her. We continued together, the connection strong between us. I reached up, holding her as we moved in sync. The intensity built up again, and she responded eagerly, enjoying the closeness. Her body reacted to every movement, and it felt like time slowed down for both of us. After some time, she lay still, and we rested for a while. Her body was still responding, even though she was catching her breath. We stayed close, letting the moment settle, and I could feel her relaxing after all the intensity. Despite feeling tired, the connection between us kept pulling us back together, and we found ourselves lost in the moment once again. There was a sense of closeness and understanding that made everything feel natural and effortless. It was a shared experience that brought us even closer, but it was also a moment of calm after the storm of emotions. Finally, we both lay there, quiet and at peace. The intensity of the night faded, leaving a sense of contentment and connection between us. We had shared something powerful, and now, in the quiet of the night, it felt like everything had settled into a place of understanding and calm. I can't stop thinking about her. Maybe it's how her body looks, especially her legs, or maybe it's the way she reacts when we share these moments together. I need to be with her, so I take my time, moving gently and feeling how smooth everything is. It's hard to tell if she's enjoying it or if I'm pushing too far, so I ask, "Am I hurting you?" She replies, "No, please don't stop. It hurts a bit, but it feels so good. Keep going." And so I do, until she reaches a point of joy, and then I feel it too. If last night was amazing, tonight felt even better. Afterward, I get up and tidy things up. I grab a warm washcloth to clean us both, then carefully move her to another room. The sheets we used are definitely a mess. Last night had a lot on my mind, but I slept well because I was tired. I'm thankful Felix has been helping me train. Spending time with Ashley is just as demanding as a wrestling match. Now I see she's still asleep and the sheets are all messed up. I quickly head back to my room, knowing that if I start again, I won't get anything done today, and I have things to do. A quick shower and a strong coffee later, I'm on the phone with someone in DC, which is already afternoon there. I'm not sure if the line is secure, so I stick to simple updates about ongoing negotiations and mention I need to go to the embassy soon to get a package. He wishes me luck. After leaving a note for Ashley, I call Clay and say I need to stop by the embassy for something. He says he and Felix will take me. A moment later, there's a light knock on the door, and we head down the elevator together. Felix checks the car for any unwanted devices before we leave. "What's up, boss?" Clay asks. I'm not exactly sure, but I received a warning last night that I need to consider. I might be here for a while, so why don't you both come in with me? I mainly need to use a secure line at the embassy. The liaison told me Tom had already set everything up. Once I arrive, I share what I know with the team there, including Randy, a serious man named Don, and someone called David from Homeland. They all seem to take the warnings seriously. I answer their questions and ask my own, particularly about who might be threatening me. No one offers any names, but they advise me to be cautious and to return to the embassy tomorrow morning. We should check the place thoroughly when we get back and prepare to talk securely, I say. Not Al, but everyone else. Ashley, wearing jeans and a hoodie, greeted us at the door. I signaled for silence while Charlie swept the area, using 2 different tools, then turned on the noise blockers. Ashley had fresh coffee ready for us. We poured ourselves cups and enjoyed the drink while Charlie worked. Afterward, we all sat around the table. I shared what Ference had said the night before and talked about my conversation with Tom Yonkers, Randy Howard, Don, and David. Clay suggested that Claude should send more security, but after thinking it over, we decided against it for now. A group of 12 or more won't change our situation here, especially not in a country leaning toward Russia instead of the West. We need to act like good guests until this all plays out. Maybe Ference is mistaken, or maybe he's right. But until we know more, gathering information is better than guessing what some unknown troublemaker will do, I explained. I understand that, Rob, but with just 4 of us, we're at a disadvantage if they try to hurt you or the rest of us, Clay replied. Can I at least contact Ference to see if he can help? He seems well connected. We agreed to that compromise, but I still believed that our best chance to complete the deal and stay safe relied on Tom Yonkers and his team back in Washington and beyond. I made an attempt to convince Ashley to leave the country, but she stubbornly refused. As you said, we don't know the full situation, and if anyone is in danger, it's you, Mr. McGregor. I'm not going anywhere until you do, she insisted. I thought we were fully prepared for the formal event, but we found out that our security team needed tuxedos. Ashley also wanted to get a dress and shoes she saw at a fancy shop we passed. I want to make an impression in Hungarian society tomorrow night. Maybe we can become so well known in one night that they won't dare to harm us without being seen, she declared. It sounded a bit too ambitious, but who knows? I needed some time alone to catch up on business and personal matters back home, so I asked them to go out with the promise that I would stay in my room and not answer the door, using the security measures they left if anyone tried to get in. It was already bedtime back in Texas, but I called anyway, hoping the kids were still awake. Thankfully they were, and I kept them up longer than usual, listening to their stories before sharing a bedtime tale based on something I had learned on the trip. After our chat, I wrote them each an email with pictures of the sights we had seen, promising to take them to Europe next summer. Then I silently hoped I would be alive to fulfill that promise. This made me think about their future with their mother and my own uncertain fate, so I quickly sent messages to Claude, Ava, and Doc. They were carefully written to show gratitude for their help with the kids, while also asking for their ongoing support of Grace and Doss as long as their parents were away. After that, I got upset enough to send an email to Caitlin that might have seemed a bit harsh. Questioning how she cared for our kids was probably too much, and saying negative things about her feelings for me might have come off as bitter. I also told her to pull herself together and return to reality quickly, which could be seen as lacking empathy for what she was going through. But that was how I felt at the time, and I let her know how emotional I was. Well, whatever. She had nearly 8 months to rest and heal in a nice place in Arizona. It was time for her to face the truth. A truth that might involve a lot of difficult situations. But who said life is always easy? I never said it would be perfect. Al called to invite us to visit some of his cousins, but I turned him down for myself and the others who still weren't back. I thought I could use a nap after the late nights and all the activity, so I got comfortable and lay down. Napping in the afternoon is unusual for me, but I quickly drifted off to sleep. I guess Ashley checked on me because I woke up hours later with a blanket over me and I was alone. I got up, took care of my needs, and went back to sleep. It was bright outside when I woke up again, and my watch said I had slept for more than 11 hours, which might be a personal record for me. A pot of coffee and breakfast from room service made me feel brand new. I hadn't heard from Ashley, so I took a look. She looked lovely sleeping there, but I had to get to the embassy quickly, so I left her be. We were taken back to the same conference room, but this time the CIA station chief joined us. Tom's room had a couple of new people as well, and they were still strangers to me, Clay, and Felix. One was introduced only as a specialist in Russian oligarchs. He had a thick Eastern European accent, maybe Czech, and he shared a name, Peter Volkov. We learned that the oligarch who died in the auto explosion after buying Caitlin and our kids in Mexico was actually working for Peter Volkov, and he had purchased my family on Volkov's behalf. We also learned that he was said to be a close ally of a high-ranking Russian leader, and his influence seemed to stretch far and wide. That news was not comforting. The next speaker, who had an Israeli accent, told us about the extent of Volkov's crime network and how he had power over several leaders, including Hungary's. He also mentioned the strength of Volkov's resources. This made it clear that trying to negotiate our contract might be impossible. He was too connected and nearly unstoppable if he chose to act. The last speaker was a stocky Scot who smiled as he told us that Volkov would be at the state dinner with us that evening. He said that Volkov planned to share some good news himself, but invited me to discuss elsewhere. This made me think. So, is this negotiation offer genuine, or is it just a way to get me out of the picture? After a brief pause, Tom replied, "We're not sure, Rob. It seems like he and the government want the fields developed, but we can't tell if he wants that more than he wants you out of the way. That's unclear." "Okay. What's your best advice?" This led to a longer discussion in which the Budapest station chief assured us he had everything covered on his side, while Tom promised to make sure everything was ready back home. I'm not a fan of plans that rely on everything going smoothly, but it worked well in Mexico. Did we use up all our luck there? I returned to my room and sent another email to Caitlin. The six of us looked quite sharp in our tuxedos. We seemed like fitting companions for Ashley, who sparkled in a long black gown. The gown shimmered with sequins, had one shoulder covered, leaving the other bare, and featured a slit from her ankle to mid-thigh. She was as nervous as a cat, but still composed and absolutely stunning. That wasn't just my view. Every man at the palace seemed to agree, including a large man introduced as Peter Volkov by the Minister of Minerals and Petrology. After mingling and making introductions, we took our seats, and I noticed that Volkov was sitting directly across from Ashley and me, next to the minister. I wasn't sure what to expect, but they were polite throughout the meal, though it was clear both would rather be enjoying Ashley's company. Ashley shone brightly, engaging in conversations on various topics with different dignitaries and guests. She showed curiosity, grace, charm, and her business skills as needed. I sat quietly, admiring how she impressed everyone, realizing I had found a true partner in business rather than just an assistant. Her grace was remarkable. She skillfully used her fork. While left-handed forks are common in formal dining, I struggled with my left hand. There were speeches about a bright future as partnerships between Hungarian businesses and others aimed at developing the rich resources of this beautiful land. The mixed language presentation was a bit hard to follow, but Al seemed to understand and enjoy what was being said. I made sure to stay involved, applauded at the right moments, and tried to be a good guest while waiting for something unexpected to happen. Ashley and I danced well together, even though we didn't know the music or each other very well. After a couple of dances, though, she got busy talking to Volkov, the minister, and other important guests. I took the opportunity to dance with others who wanted to, but our conversations were limited due to my basic Hungarian and their simple English. Still, they seemed happy with my efforts. Volkov waited until just before the event was about to end to invite me outside to enjoy a Cuban. After we lit them, he smiled and told me he had secured the rights to the minerals we were interested in. I tried to look surprised, but he probably knew I wasn't. He assured me we could make a deal, but I would need to go with him to his home outside Kaunas, Lithuania, to finish the talks due to some urgent business. I pretended to be surprised again and asked if Al would join us as the COG representative. He said that wouldn't be necessary. I could represent the partner company instead. He said we needed to leave right away by helicopter to handle the urgent matters, promising I would be back in Budapest after the negotiations. When we were joined by two strong men who clearly had weapons and directed us to the elevator, it was a bit frightening but not unexpected. I said I wasn't ready to travel and needed to inform my friends of my change in plans, but Volkov warned me that the deal would be off if I didn't show my trust by coming with him. I hesitantly agreed. explaining I needed to text Ashley so she wouldn't worry. He allowed that, but my phone was taken when we reached the rooftop, and I was also searched. We boarded a large, fancy helicopter and flew off towards the north-northwest. I took a deep breath and tried to talk to Peter about the mineral rights. He quickly told me he had important things to focus on during the trip, and we would discuss business once we reached his home. His secure house was deep in the forest next to a quiet lake, close to the village of Valamia, but he didn't know I was aware of that. The friendly act disappeared as soon as we arrived. I was handcuffed and roughly taken to the basement of the main building. There, 2 men took turns hitting me without saying why. Volkov, no longer pretending to be polite, watched and laughed as I struggled to keep my eyes open and tasted blood. Finally, they stopped, and Volkov spoke. "McGregor, you are nothing but an annoyance, and you've caused me more trouble than I can accept. To let you know who I am, I put out a reward for your family and I bought them. You think you stopped my plans, but by this time tomorrow, they will be on a plane to Kaunas, and they will belong to me." You might ask why I would do that if you could still speak, so let me explain. Because of you. You have been in my way for nearly 10 years. I have tried to have you killed twice, and twice you managed to escape. This time you will not survive, but not before you feel the weight of your actions. You see yourself as a clever businessman and a good American. You hold on to what you believe is right and refuse to operate like everyone else. God, flag, country, that is absurd. Your country is a joke. Your people have become weak and afraid. They repeat what they are told like robots. The democracy you Americans brag about is a joke. It needs informed, active voters. Yet in many local elections, fewer than 10% of people vote, and a turnout of 1/3 of eligible voters is seen as great. It's only a bit better in state or national elections. Your system of representative democracy has been taken over, replaced by one where lawmakers listen to their parties, not the people, and these parties rely on the wealthiest for guidance. With the weakness of your lawmakers, the executive branch has taken more power. Because it chooses judges, the judicial branch often just agrees with the ones who appointed them. The richest 10% of Americans have 90% of the wealth, and the top 1% control more than 1/3. The middle class is getting smaller, and more people are struggling to get by each year. We have split you into 2 groups. Those who think American democracy is too weak to compete with strong governments like China and Russia, and those who think that if the U.S. stopped being so military-focused, everyone could get along. He paused his speech, then started laughing loudly before becoming serious again. The police are bad. Criminals are looked at as heroes. History is changed by both sides, and the other side is always wrong. Some people are afraid of statues and certain words, while others fear books, different lifestyles, and people who are not like them. We will fix all of this for you. We will tell you that you are safe and happy, and we will make sure you believe that, even if you disagree. There will be no more arguing about the right to own weapons. There will be no Second Amendment, no treasured Constitution or Bill of Rights. Only the military and police will have weapons, and anyone found with one will face serious consequences, and since the state will control all media, there will be no need for freedom of speech. You may feel small, but people like you are in our way, so you must go. But first, you will face pain. No one harms my people and takes what belongs to us. No one can stop us from taking over your country. Tonight, my men will hurt you badly, but we will let you live long enough to see your family. Then I will end your life in front of them. You will know they are with me, the better person, and that you were never more than a small obstacle. The next round of pain was intense, but thankfully short after Volkov left. I'm not sure if they got tired, showed mercy, or just thought it better to let their leader have the final act in front of my family. They dragged my aching body into a small cell, took off my cuffs, gave me a bottle of water, and left me in the dark. I carefully cleaned my face after drinking, then lay down on the hard floor. It was definitely early morning, but I had lost track of time. If Volkov's plan works out, I would be gone by midnight tomorrow, and my family would witness it. I wondered if my passing would free Caitlin from her fear of me, and then I lost consciousness. The guard and a woman who brought me another bottle of water the next morning looked at me in shock, turned away, and wouldn't look at me again. I must look terrible. I certainly feel awful. It's painful, but pain means I'm still alive, which is better than the other option. It was cold in my basement cell at night, but it warmed up during the day. I hadn't seen Volkov or anyone else since I woke up, but I used my water carefully and still had a few sips left in the middle of the afternoon. My face and mouth were so swollen that it was hard to get water in and swallow, and it hurt going down my sore throat, but I knew I had to drink. The light faded away, and I waited for the sound of a helicopter bringing my family, hoping our safety plans had worked. I heard nothing and fell asleep again. I woke up not to the sound of a helicopter, but to the creaking of my cell door opening. Two men pulled me up by the arms and took me back to the chair in the middle of the room where Volkov was waiting. They didn't tie me up this time. Instead, they held me still. Volkov hit me hard and shouted angrily in Russian, "You think your family is safe now, but this is just my first move. I will send a larger group to deal with those who protect them and bring them to me, and I will do it soon. They might not see me hurt you, but I will show them what is left of you." He raised a weapon and pointed it at me. "What happened, Strong One?" I managed to whisper through my swollen lips. "Did you mess up again?" His face turned dark red with anger as he stepped closer. "You think I've lost? I have you, don't I? I will end you tonight, take care of your friends tomorrow, and then capture your family. Why do you want my family? Tell me that before you hurt me." "I met your wife and kids at a party Robert hosted. Caitlin is a beautiful woman. Robert was supposed to bring her to me, but your FBI stopped him, and she left before he could deliver her and your children. Maybe you would call it an obsession, but I want her with me, and I need your children to keep her happy. My men tried to bring her to me in the desert and again in the mountains, but they failed. They were successful at the school, but you saved her in Mexico just before she was to come to me." "What happened today?" I asked, feeling blood drip from my cracked lips. "My men thought she was still in Arizona, but she had been moved back to your home in the mountains. They didn't see the true strength of their opponents, so the attack failed. But it will work next time. They will be too many. Your friends will be in trouble then, and you will meet your end tonight, allowing me to have your wife." He smirked at me and aimed the weapon. I looked back at him, wondering if this was the end. Then the house shook with loud explosions, followed by another and another. I could hear some commotion just outside the house. Volkov shouted at his men and they raced up the stairs with their weapons ready. Ignoring me, Volkov rushed to a window and peered outside at the chaos approaching the house. He turned back in a panic, only to see me standing behind him, holding one of the rods they had used on me. His surprise might have slowed him down, and before he could lift his gun, I struck his arm with a metal rod. He cried out and dropped the gun, bending over in pain from my blow to his side. Swinging the rod was hard, but I kept going. I lifted it high and brought it down on the back of his head. He fell to the floor. I grabbed the pistol with my right hand and hit him in the side with the rod in my left. He groaned and turned onto his back. "How does it feel now, huh? Who has the gun now?" He looked up at me and raised his hand as if trying to block something. Just then, I heard footsteps coming down the stairs. Two men rushed into the basement shouting. They saw me standing over their boss and raised their guns. I quickly shot the man in the front and then the other one beside him. These were the two who had hurt me badly the night before. Both were badly injured, but I walked over and poked the rod into their wounds to make it worse. I then took their guns and returned to Volkov. "Listen closely, Volkov. Your empire is done. The CIA, the British Secret Service, the Israeli intelligence, and the Australian forces are all involved. Your records will be taken, your spies around the world will be stopped, and your empire will fall apart. You will die alone in this dirty place at my hand, the hand of the one who has brought you down." He tried to say something, but screamed instead when I shot his leg. He began pleading, perhaps in Russian. I told him I didn't understand Russian and shot him in the other knee. He cried out again and started begging in English. I shot him again, laughing at his desperate pleas for his life. "Even if you somehow live, you will never be a father again. You won't be able to have children, O mighty one!" I thought about kneeling down to finish it, but if I knelt, I might not be able to stand again. So I aimed at the center of his chest. It was time to end this. "Hello, Robert Roy. It's good to see you're alive and have our target under control." Through my broken teeth and sore gums, I replied, "Hello, Agent Shore. It's great to see you. I really mean it this time. But it would have been better if you had come a bit earlier, as we planned. You were right. The plan was too complicated. But we made it in time. Now you have the chance to end his life. He's a terrible man who has tried to harm you and your family multiple times. He deserves this. However, if you let me take him with me, I can promise he will never trouble you again, and his life will be filled with pain beyond what you could imagine. It was more painful than I could imagine. What we learned from him would be used to break his connections and dismantle his group. Can I take him? If not, I understand if you want to end it. He has brought this on himself. Feeling dizzy, I grabbed the gun with my left hand, leaned over and hit Volkov with it. I damaged his mouth as he had done to mine. Then, I fell onto him. When I first woke up, it was dark and quiet. There were small lights and soft mechanical sounds, but I was too tired to look around. The next time I opened my eyes, I realized I was in a bed, probably in a hospital. My right arm and leg were in casts, and my leg was raised. Oxygen was flowing into my nose, which felt uncomfortable. My left eye was hurting badly, and I couldn't see from it. I carefully turned my head and saw some machines making beeping sounds above me. There was an IV in my left arm. I tried to shift my body to ease the pain in my back, but it caused sharp pain everywhere, and I gasped. A face appeared in the door. It took a moment to recognize Armando, a member of my security team. When he saw me awake, he called for help and rushed to my side. "Wow, boss! We thought we were going to lose you. It's great to see you awake. I called for your doctor." I couldn't speak because of the tube taped over my mouth, and moving my arm was both hard and painful. But Armando seemed to understand. "You're in the Level 1 Trauma Center at Oslo University Hospital in Norway. They brought you here after the trouble at Volkov's place. We took control of Volkov's helicopter to get you to Germany. But then Clay found out that some American doctors from Mayo were here to train the local doctors, so they decided to bring you here. Doctors are on their way. I'll come back later." I must have been an interesting case, because soon 8 doctors and a few others who looked like nurses were there. One of them, who seemed to lead, started introducing the group as soon as he saw I was awake, and then they started examining me gently. At some point, I managed to point at the tube taped over my mouth. They understood and began to remove the tape. They warned me it would hurt, but I was not ready for the long tube they pulled out. Once it was out, my throat burned and my mouth felt dry. I ran my tongue over my swollen lips and felt the pain from my broken front teeth. One of the medical staff put a small piece of ice on my tongue and reminded me to keep it away from my broken teeth. That was good advice since they were extra sensitive. The poking and checking continued while I melted 3 ice chips in my mouth, given by a kind nurse. I listened closely and understood that they were making plans for my care. Feeling nervous about speaking, I cleared my throat and whispered, "Doc, how bad is it?" He smiled at the other doctors and replied, "It was serious. When you arrived, you had internal bleeding that we had to stop before we could do anything else. You were lucky that our team from Mayo Clinic was nearby, training doctors with new trauma equipment. We discovered an abdominal aortic aneurysm along with several fractures in your skull, eye socket, leg, arm, ribs, hands, and fingers. You have many bruises and internal injuries." He looked more pleased than worried as he listed my injuries, and his colleagues seemed just as satisfied. "What about my eye?" I asked quietly. "We'll assess it, but I believe it will heal and you should see better, at least somewhat." That wasn't the best answer, but it was better than being told I would be blind. "Just so you know, Mr. McGregor, we have a dentist ready to help you. Since it's later in the day, we'll arrange for you to see him tomorrow." He sighed, but smiled kindly. "We understand your situation and the pain you're in. Now that you're awake, we'll give you more medication to help you rest and heal. We know about your kidnapping and rescue. You have some standing based on who reached out to us about your case and the need to keep us updated about you. You would receive our best care no matter who you were, but you can be sure that you will continue to get excellent treatment. You still have a long way to go, but you're responding well to our care. Now, Mr. McGregor, the hard part is patience. This won't be a quick fix, and your recovery will depend on your effort, tolerance for pain, and patience." That was all very interesting, but whatever they gave me made me quite sleepy and less concerned about everything. Patience isn't my best quality, but I didn't really have a choice. Days turned into weeks, and those weeks turned into a month. I didn't have many visitors, but my friends Armando, Felix, and Charlie were nearby the whole time. On the second day, I asked about my family and found out that Caitlin had been moved from the resort in Arizona to the mountain lair as soon as they figured out Volkov's plan. His group tried to attack the lair, but they were defeated by a stronger team made up of Ultimate Solution staff and the Rough Riders, a new name for the joined forces of the Brotherhood and Terlingua militia. The doctors didn't allow me to use any electronic devices, including phones, for the first few weeks of my recovery, but now I had a new iPhone. I had no contacts, so I could only call people whose numbers I remembered, but I could text, call, and FaceTime the kids. I wasn't sure my reassurances about my health were fully believed because, as Grace said, sounding upset, "They won't let us visit you. They say you are too sick, Daddy." I told her I was far away on another continent, but that didn't help much, so I promised I'd try to fix things so they could come see me soon. When I was able, I made Ashley the COO. She called me every day at 9 a.m. Texas time, and we talked about business matters. The fun teasing was gone, and she never brought up our previous times together. I hinted a few times, but she quickly returned to business, so I took the hint and let it go. Eventually, the eye patch came off, and I could see pretty well after a few days of blurry vision from the blood in my eye. The dental work was finished during the first 3 weeks, which was a big relief, and I now had a nice smile, even if they were implants. My broken bones are healing nicely, and I have a light cast on my arm, but my leg will need 6 more weeks or longer due to needing to bear weight. My internal injuries are healed, but I still feel some soreness. Felix says he'll help with that when I start my real physical therapy again. After 6 weeks, boredom set in, so I convinced Felix and Armando to take me out for a ride. This was my first trip to Norway, and I wanted to see more than just the view of Oslo from my window, despite the beautiful autumn leaves. Our outing was fun, but we had to keep it short since daylight lasts only about 6 hours in November in Oslo. It was still better than northern Norway, where the sun doesn't show at all by late November. However, you can see the northern lights there. I wanted to explore a fjord, but the closest one was over 200 miles away, so we went to the Viking Ship Museum. We marveled at how their long journeys were made in what were basically large rowboats. They traveled to places in Asia, the Middle East, Northern Africa, Iceland, Greenland, and Newfoundland, where they even built a colony. All of that in an open boat less than 65 feet long, with 24 to 50 oars and just one sail. They sat on their things while they rowed and slept outside. I was amazed by these brave explorers. Although they had done some terrible things, they were undeniably strong and fearless in ways we rarely see today. Because of the 7-hour time difference, the kids and I had made the 30 minutes before they went to school our happy half hour. It was 7:15 a.m. there, but already 2:15 where I was, so we either video called or talked on the phone 3 days a week at that time. They were always cheerful and talkative, even though they were not happy about my long absence. The team from Mayo had gone home, leaving me with a Norwegian doctor who had a great sense of humor and loved to tease. We got along well, but I was so used to his jokes that I didn't really pay attention when he suddenly told me, "Okay, Rob, you can go home now." He laughed when he saw my confusion and explained that all my serious injuries had healed. My rehab would just involve using crutches for a few more weeks and being careful about checking my abdomen for any new painful spots. "I don't quite trust you to follow the instructions on this sheet," he said, "but the woman who checks on you regularly assures me she will enforce them strictly. Plus, I heard you have a doctor at home. I'm comfortable releasing you into their care even if you're not the best at looking after yourself. You have too many scars for someone your age who isn't a soldier." I found myself wondering who that doctor was since I still hadn't spoken to Caitlin. Maybe it was Ashley or Ava? No, that didn't seem right because he mentioned them. It was just curiosity to keep my mind busy while I packed the few things my guardians had bought for me as I got ready to leave the bed. Felix and Armando came in before I finished, and I eagerly asked them to get us tickets to Dallas as soon as possible. They chuckled and told me we already had seats saved on a private jet sent by Secretary Yonkers. When I raised my eyebrow in surprise, one of them continued, "Oh, you didn't know? The president made him the new Secretary of Defense. That happened just after your rescue." I'm sure I looked as surprised as I felt, but they just smiled and said they would tell me more soon since the plane would be here shortly. The plane was a Falcon LX with 3 engines, able to reach the U.S. without needing gas. Once I got over how nice it was, and after our drink and dinner orders were taken by the kind flight attendant, my guardians began to share updates. In short, Edward Robert Lee was back as Attorney General, both he and Tom Yonkers having been appointed around the same time. The previous office holders had been let go and had vanished from the public eye soon after. Volkov had also vanished and was thought to be dead, but his group was being taken apart piece by piece in countries across the globe, except for Russia. Even Lithuania and Estonia were involved in the efforts and had recovered considerable money from his illegal accounts. Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban had not been heard from since Volkov's disappearance. Yet the Minister of Minerals and Petrology suddenly had the power to grant the pipeline and drilling rights outlined in a contract, the same one we celebrated at the state dinner. He gave those rights to Keog, where Al Varga had just become the new vice president. His role included managing the Hungarian project and seeking more leases in Hungary and Eastern Europe. I smiled, confident he would do well, and I knew my skills would be needed again. No one mentioned the mother of my children, so I asked, "So what happened with Caitlin? Is she still at the lair or back in Arizona?" Both shrugged, admitting they hadn't heard her name since just after the clash at the lair with Volkov's men. Felix looked confused for a moment and said, "Thinking about it, that's a bit odd considering Clay is back in Davis County and we talk to him every few days. You'd think he'd have mentioned her." We refueled in western Pennsylvania and landed at an airfield just outside Fort Davis. I believed it was the Crescent Moon Ranch, but I couldn't tell from the air in the early morning light. There were many buildings and hangars, and the runway seemed to be at least 9,000 feet long, maybe more. If this was my new ranch, a lot had changed since my last visit. There was no visible activity outside, but a Suburban was waiting for us when we finished taxiing. Claude was the only person inside. He greeted us warmly, informing Felix and Armando that breakfast was available in the mess hall. He would drop them off first, then show them to their rooms. He expected them to rest and recover from jet lag before returning to work tomorrow. Claude was friendly, but seemed reserved after dropping off the others. Our usual easy conversation was missing, and he appeared tense. When he slowed down to let the gate to the lair open, I asked, "What's going on, buddy? You seem too tense. What am I walking into?" He sighed. "Sorry, I guess I am tense. There are signs that the uprising will happen sooner than we thought, and our forces aren't fully ready yet." "Okay, I understand that, but why are you so worried when you're bringing me home? Am I in for an unpleasant surprise?" Another sigh followed. "I honestly don't know what you will find. Your ex-wife has been quite quiet and reflective since she returned abruptly from her treatment. She doesn't say much, if anything, around me or Eva. I noticed her talking to Clay for a bit after he returned, but Doc and the uncles were also quite worried about her well-being." With a deep sigh, I took my suitcase from the car while he carried it inside. I slowly made my way up the stairs to the kitchen. After we poured some coffee, I gathered my courage and started for the stairs. "Rob," he started. I shrugged and carefully continued up the stairs to the master bedroom. But it was empty. I checked the room where Caitlin had been before we sorted things out and found her there, asleep among tangled sheets, alone. She was lying on her side, her golden hair gently brushing her cheek. In that moment, she looked so peaceful. I leaned my crutch against the wall and took a couple of steps closer to her. I softly moved her hair from her face and kissed her on the cheek. She stirred slightly but didn't wake up, so I tried again. This time she opened her eyes and I was just inches away. Thank you, honey. That's my favorite way to wake up." She stretched, yawned, and then suddenly sat upright. "Rob, you're home!" She then began to cry, tears flowing freely. I sat on the bed and turned to her, reaching out. When she felt my hands, she leaned into me, wrapping her arms around me, crying against my chest. I held her gently and patiently, even though my injuries ached. Still, my heart was full of joy. After a good 10 minutes, her sobs started to fade. Her forehead rested against my chest and my shirt was soaked with her tears. I kept holding her and began gently stroking her hair. Eventually, her crying stopped. "I'm sorry," she whispered from my chest. I replied softly, "You don't need to be sorry, darling. I need to apologize for the hurt I've caused you." Her tear-filled eyes looked up at me in disbelief. "No, no, Rob," she said, shaking her head. "My counselors helped me see my own issues and why I reacted the way I did. You have nothing to apologize for. It's all me." "Please, let's not do this," I replied firmly. "We can talk about who's to blame if we want, but all I want is to hold you right now. Can we agree on that? I've missed you so much." We managed to convince our excited children that it was still a school day, even with Daddy home, but I walked with them to the school door. After that, we returned home, had breakfast, enjoyed a cup of coffee, and talked. Sometimes she sat next to me, sometimes we faced each other, and other times we stood side by side, gazing out at the mountains while we talked. It felt good to be together. Everyone respected our need for privacy, no matter where we were. She said her long treatment led to an awakening. It was like a sudden realization about things from her childhood that impacted her teenage years and young adulthood more than they should have. She felt she hadn't fully grown mentally and emotionally. This delay in her emotional growth led to decisions that harmed our marriage and broke our happy family. When we reunited in the Big Bend, the stress magnified these issues for her. She talked a lot about psychological and medical ideas, often with complete sincerity. Sometimes it seemed confusing or like she had adopted a new belief system. Still, I listened, and slowly I began to understand her perspective. Though my wording would be different, I could see some truth in her conclusions with her therapist. She shared that while she could love and care for our children, she viewed their needs through the lens of her own feelings. They told her she wasn't clinically selfish, but that her love was often dependent on having her own needs met too. This pattern applied to our marriage as well. During our courtship, she held me to a high standard of attention and support. She didn't grasp why I couldn't always meet those needs while managing my own responsibilities, which included a lot of travel. She sometimes let her emotional needs override her logic. What I heard was that she was a spoiled child, then a spoiled teenager, and finally a spoiled adult, something I had supported in the early years. I fulfilled her dream of marrying the right person to create a perfect life. When we had children, it completed her idea of a perfect family. Everything seemed fine at first, but as the kids needed more of her time and I provided less, her desire for attention grew. Enter Robert. Of course, every difficult moment she faced tied back to our relationship. It seemed neat and tidy on the surface, but I didn't see it that way. Yes, she was a spoiled princess, and yes, I had tried to make her life perfect in every way. We had already talked through these thoughts after her big confession. The woman who showed up on my patio in the desert, the one I'd been with for over a year before everything changed, wasn't the same person I had once known. She was no longer the carefree, self-centered girl I divorced. Instead, she had become grounded, a strong and capable woman, someone you could count on, as they say in the Bend. What happened to her in Mexico? I understood a bit more about how traumatic events affect the mind after my experiences in Lithuania, but I couldn't quite grasp what happens when those events involve even deeper violations. I wanted to ask more about that, to understand better, but today wasn't about me talking. It was my turn to listen. So I let her speak and tried to absorb what she shared. Maria, reading the mood, quietly brought out a tray with 2 plates of carne guisada tacos, rice, beans, salad, and iced tea. We sat at the patio table and ate in near silence, exchanging only a few polite words. Afterward, Caitlin continued explaining what her therapists had told her, sharing their theories and insights. With only an hour left before school let out, she hesitated for a moment. I saw my chance to shift the conversation and took it. "You've told me a lot about your therapist, and I know you believe they've helped you figure things out. I'm not entirely sure about that, but I am sure about one thing: you've had an amazing personal trainer. Your body has gone from great to incredible. Is there even an ounce of fat on you?" That comment brought a smile to her face, chasing away the serious look she'd been wearing. "Thank you. I'm surprised you can even tell with these baggy jeans and this flannel shirt." She continued, "Yeah, Brandon or April had me working hard every day. I lifted weights, ran long distances, sprinted, danced until I almost passed out, and did so many exercises that I could barely stand up afterward. I even..." Her words kept coming, so I reached out and gently lifted the hem of her shirt just enough to show off her toned stomach. Nice six-pack, I said with a grin. I let my fingers trail lightly across her abdomen, tracing the firm muscles beneath her skin, and paused for a moment at her belly button before lowering my hand. She looked surprised, but I kept things playful. I dropped the shirt and knelt down, lightly tugging at the waistband of her jeans. The loose-fitting fabric easily slid down, pooling around her shoes. Her expression shifted, but I kept my tone light and teasing, making sure the moment stayed comfortable. As I knelt, I leaned in and kissed her belly gently, keeping things calm and lighthearted. When I finished unbuttoning her shirt, I slipped it off her shoulders, still keeping the moment relaxed and playful, without pushing any boundaries. We remained close, simply enjoying the moment together. Now, she stood on the patio, dressed only in a simple white bra and panties. The bra had a front clasp, and she didn't resist as I gently removed it from her. She glanced around, checking to see if anyone was watching, but stayed calm. The cool air made her shiver slightly as it touched her skin. I knelt down, my hands reaching for her waistband. As I pulled her panties down, she stepped out of them without hesitation. There was a moment of quiet as we both took in the stillness around us. She stood there a little unsure, but I kept things light. We were simply two people sharing a moment of closeness. I gently touched her and she responded, her breathing steady but deep. I met her eyes briefly and saw her look up at the sky, lost in the quiet calm of the night. After a little while I teased her playfully, but it was clear that she trusted me. She reassured me with soft words and a smile, wanting to stay close and share the moment. It was a quiet, intimate time, without rush or pressure. The cool night air and the peaceful surroundings added to the calm atmosphere. We both enjoyed the simple closeness, not needing anything more than each other's company. Once she had settled back into the present, a slight blush came over her as she realized we weren't entirely alone. The guards and others nearby were in the background, but we both understood this was just a moment shared between us, nothing more. I smiled, understanding her embarrassment, but we both knew it was just part of who she was, and there was no need to worry. We let the quiet wash over us as the night continued. She pushed my head away, stepped back, and quickly grabbed her clothes from the floor. She put everything on except her bra, which I decided to keep. I almost kept her panties too, but I knew her jeans would be soaked. Darn you, Robert Roy McGregor. I can't believe how many people might have seen that or heard me at the end. Trust me, Caitlin. No one who saw was bothered by what you showed or by how you felt. With your looks, you should wear as little as you can. If you've got it, show it off. She playfully slapped me and laughed, then looked around carefully. Not seeing anyone, she turned back to me. Not that I mind, but what made you do that? I can only handle so much deep thinking at once. I needed a break, and you did too, before you ran out of breath from talking so much. Well, thank you, I guess, but I hope no one was watching. Of course not, sweetie, although the security cameras are probably running and there are people on the nearby hills with binoculars. She shrieked, tapped me lightly and said, "It's time to go get the kids." It was the gold team's turn to watch the school that day, so we found the waiting green team and headed to Fort Davis a bit early. The guard in the passenger seat pretended to listen to someone in his earpiece, laughed and said, "I will." He turned, smiled at Caitlin and said, "Claude wants to thank you for your performance in the play, whatever that means." She turned bright red, raised her middle finger and said, "Tell him I sent this." He burst out laughing and the driver joined in. When he could finally speak, he said, "Boss, she flipped you off." He waited with a smile on his face and then laughed again. Caitlin's face was still red when he turned back with a big grin. "The boss says to tell you he's glad you still have that dimple despite the weight loss." Caitlin stiffened, blushed deeply, and then laughed with the rest of us in the SUV. We were still laughing when we pulled up in front of the school and let the 4 children in. The kids wanted ice cream slushes from the drugstore, so we stopped by and treated them and ourselves to sundaes. It felt good to be home. Their uncles were waiting for the kids when we got to the house. Each uncle got a hug and a kiss on the cheek from every child. The happiness on their faces was clear, the kids and the adults. My 2 needed my attention and comfort that I was staying. Eva's kids wanted to share everything I missed with the man who had taken care of them after their ordeal. After spending the day listening to Caitlin, I had a full afternoon and evening of listening to 4 excited kids. My ears were tired when Ava started talking to me about following the rules so I could heal well. I covered my ears and said, "No more talk." She made me lie down on the couch. She knelt beside me and Caitlin joined her. They showed me how to check for any new sore spots in my stomach. I jumped a bit, but she said that was normal since I had some injuries. "It still hurts. Please be gentle." She laughed and called me a baby. Claude and Caitlin joined her laughter, but when Caitlin touched my scars, their smiles faded quickly. I felt incredibly tired before 9 o'clock. I hate to interrupt, but my body thinks it's still in Oslo where it's 4 in the morning. I need to rest. A shower helped, but I fell asleep deeply as soon as my head hit the pillow. Is there anything better than waking up next to someone you care for, especially when you feel close to them, with warmth all around? There are different ways to be together, but sometimes just cuddling feels the best. That's how it felt with Caitlin. I felt surrounded by love. I was doing my best to comfort her, and she seemed happy, even trying to muffle her excitement with a pillow. Just when she began to calm down, I felt a wave of happiness wash over us. While resting beside her, I wondered if she seemed more excited than before, or if she was just longing for connection after some time apart. Finally, the need to use the bathroom woke me up. This prompted Caitlin to decide to shower. I wanted to join her, but she said that wouldn't work because the kids would be up soon. I had my shower and got dressed before the kids came rushing in, yelling for us to come eat breakfast and take them to school. We followed them downstairs where everyone greeted us with, "Morning, Rob! Morning, Chica!" Caitlin blushed at being called Chica. She made a playful, mean face, but it didn't last long with her happy smile. After dropping off the kids, we returned home, where Caitlin started helping me with my recovery exercises. Some of the stretches hurt, and I told her so, but she kept pushing me to do my best. She was tough, but not worse than the therapist I had at the hospital. I saw a side of her I hadn't noticed before. After our exercises, she began checking my stomach, and for some reason I felt a rush of emotions. She noticed and looked at me, surprised. "Really? That's all it takes?" "Well," I complained, "you're dressed in tights and a low-cut sweater, and we barely got started this morning before family matters interrupted. But now we have plenty of time." She laughed, helped me up, gave me my crutch, and said, "Last one to the top has to take the bottom position." I lost that race badly, but it wasn't so bad. Being in that position meant I had my hands free, which was nice, and I had her small frame to support instead of my heavier build, so who really lost? I would say she did, but the number of times she enjoyed herself made me think otherwise. My little partner was now full of energy and excitement, and we both loved every moment together. Lying there, feeling the warmth of her, I wondered why all my feelings of frustration about her leaving me for months disappeared when I got home, and she just apologized. I couldn't quite figure it out, but it didn't seem important anymore. She was very much present now. Then it struck me. I needed to tell Chica about Pantera. Yikes. I quickly compared the two, and I was surprised to find that Chica won by a long shot. She had both athletic ability and a special spark, but Caitlin brought a mix of love and charm. Caitlin, I started carefully, avoiding her gaze. "There's something I need to tell you. I thought your leaving meant you had moved on, and I know," she interrupted. "Ashley and I had a lot of talks when she got back from Budapest. Was she as great as everyone says?" I hesitated, feeling uneasy. "Well, yes, and no. I mean, she mentioned you were amazing together and that it was unforgettable." I felt a bit jealous, but then she told me it was incredible but lacked a real connection. She was sorry for her part in it, but I said I was glad it happened because being around both of you while you were interested in each other was going to be hard for anyone. Hopefully, now that you've had your experience, you'll be able to resist those feelings. I hope you can, but I'll admit that even I could be tempted one night, if she wanted, so I understand if you can't. I doubt I'll have that chance. Since I woke up in Norway, her calls have been strictly about work. Whenever I tried to bring up our past, she quickly changed the topic. It seems she has moved on, so it doesn't matter if I feel tempted or not. She mentioned she has stayed away from relationships since her divorce, so I guess she's fine without it. It's a real shame for that person to be locked away. Caitlin chuckled. "At least you're honest." I agree about her being locked up, but she already has someone interested in her, or at least someone trying to be close to her, and he's quite eager. Oh, really? Who is it? My best friend Clay. You're swapping your friend for hers? Isn't that a bit like trading? She playfully nudged me in a harmless spot and said, He's not my friend like that and never has been. Are you jealous? Maybe a little, but I've noticed the way he looks at you when you don't see him. I think he would love to change how he feels about you. She giggled and turned a bit red. I know, but we've never done anything serious. A kiss at my hotel door in Midland is all we've shared. That must have been quite a kiss to catch his attention like that. She looked both shy and proud. It was supposed to be a quick goodbye, but he held on longer, so I showed him a bit of what I can give. Let's just say he's been a bit soft about me since then. Tease! You should have invited him inside and really shown him. She playfully nudged me again. If I had known you were going to get that amazing helper and turn her into your favorite, I would have. You have that mixed up? Laughing, she asked. So she turned you into her favorite? How do you think I got all these little marks on me? We spent a few minutes just laughing and enjoying each other's company. It felt wonderful, like the good old times. Maybe she is better now. Whatever was going on before. Then she asked, seriously, Are we back together, Rob? I hesitated because she seemed to be the one who was scared, not me. So I turned the question back to her. I think you're the one who needs to answer that, Caitlin. I didn't leave you this time. She snuggled up to me, resting her head on my chest, and said, Then that's settled. I'll never leave you again, I promise. Ashley needed mostly encouragement and support, but we chatted every single day. As long as it took for her to feel ready for what was next, there was a lot at stake. She felt most at ease with the money side of things, confidently answering clients or investors with questions about current projects, and least comfortable reaching out to potential clients and investors for upcoming projects. Her experiences in Hungary had sharpened her understanding of how to deal with foreign governments and businesses, but had also made her very cautious. I understood her feelings. I had been there too. While it's wise to be careful, I had learned over time to keep a balance with those feelings. She hadn't done it yet, but we were looking at Eastern Europe for some new projects, and that's where she was having a tough time. Noticing she could use support, I invited her to stay at my place for a while. I asked that we spend at least 2 hours a day together to finish her training, which had been interrupted. Caitlin heard me make this request and raised an eyebrow, but when I shook my head, she smiled back at me. Ash was working from a small office in Midland, so Clay offered to pick her up. It was only about 170 miles away, but he mentioned there might be a security issue, so I agreed. She promised to be ready by mid-morning the next day, no later than 10. Clay left at 7, and they returned in the afternoon. Just like her first visit, her being there changed the atmosphere. Not in a bad way, as one might think. In fact, she and Caitlin seemed to click, and her bond with Eva appeared as strong as it was before they went to Hungary. The kids still adored her, and the men watched her with admiration. Except for Claude, who only had eyes for the good doctor unless she walked out of the room. Then he looked too. Men are predictable, it seems. We spent much more than the 2-hour minimum together on the next 2 days, and they were very productive. Ashley gained confidence from my support and guidance, and I became more confident in her abilities. We managed to set up another deal in Hungary, with help from Mr. Kovac and our new friend, the Minister of Minerals and Petrology, who offered us a valuable opportunity in the large Pannonian Basin. I jumped at that, and we spent Thursday searching for investors. This was going to be big. Friday morning, we were celebrating this new opportunity and our success in attracting a couple of major investors over coffee. Caitlin, Claude, Clay, the uncles, and several of our guardians were gathered around the table when a call came in from Romania. I had never been there and didn't know anyone there, but I quieted everyone, answered, and listened. After the call, I explained to the group that the Romanian government, while still respecting the private companies producing oil in the Transylvania Basin, was creating a public-private investment group to fund new exploration using modern techniques to enhance declining production in the area. It seems my knowledge and work with revitalizing the Permian Basin caught their interest, and they wanted me to lead the effort with government support. It was an interesting offer, and knowing that Romania has a stable government and is part of the European Union made it even more appealing since it seemed safer. Everyone was curious about this opportunity as it came unexpectedly. But Caitlin was open about her concerns regarding my extended stay in Eastern Europe. We talked about it at dinner, and she made a valid point. I am a father now, and my kids need me more than I need extra money. I promised we would do thorough research and discuss both options more before making any decisions. For Hungary, we hope to finalize contracts, get investors on board, choose a company for exploration and production, and not leave Texas. For Romania, I would need to visit first, but there was no reason Caitlin couldn't join, and maybe the kids could too if we planned around a longer school break. During my phone call, I noticed a hint of something shiny on the mountain to the northeast. After the conversation about oil ended, I asked Claude about it, and he seemed a bit embarrassed. Well, boss, your friend, the new Secretary of Defense, offered a missile system that's still in testing before it gets full funding. It doesn't even have a name yet, but he assured us it works well like the more expensive Patriot system. Its range is about 5 miles, which is enough to protect the mountain lair from air attacks, which is a possibility. It can work against planes and cruise missiles, too. On your behalf, using the power of attorney you left, I agreed to let them use all 3 ranches as testing sites. I hope that's okay. I chuckled. Yeah, Claude, I do mind. Why would I want missile protection when we could be dealing with cruise missiles ourselves? Seriously, what happened to the longer-range Russian-made systems we found at the Crescent Moon? Oh, they are spread out along a path that starts on your land west of the desert lair, going north to Marfa and then to Van Horn. We could use more, but we've got decent coverage if they come from Mexico or southern New Mexico towards San Antonio or Austin. The Texas Air National Guard from El Paso and Shepherd AFB in Wichita County is in charge of central and northern New Mexico and southern Colorado. They also have help from a newly formed group in that area. We call them the Rangers. So this situation is going to involve troops, equipment, and possibly planes? Who are we up against? That's a topic for another time, boss, but I'll get everything set up. Okay, but let's do it quickly. I've been out of touch for too long with everything that has happened since I left. Now, let's take a trip to the Crescent Moon, and you can tell me what has been going on there and at the 6400. Caitlin stayed to assist Ashley in organizing her new office. I think she wanted to talk more about me. At least, that seemed to be the case from the looks they exchanged while Claude and I were leaving. It's not a huge deal, but it's a bit unsettling to think 2 women might be discussing my personal life. The Crescent Moon looked busier and messier than when I arrived. Claude, how does no one notice what's happening here? This place looks like a military base. There are people everywhere, barracks, hangars, landing spots for helicopters and planes, and even some hidden vehicles on the hills. They are camouflaged, but they are still very noticeable. This is a training area, Rob. It's marked on federal and state maps and in classified documents as a reserve military training ground, while the 6400 is noted as an artillery and bombing range. Yes, things may seem unusual if you look closely, but we aren't allowing anyone to get near or fly over. How do we stop planes from flying overhead? You haven't seen the radar site on the southwest corner of the 6400 yet. It's fully operational. It's not just basic radar. We have advanced systems to detect and track any aircraft. Any planes planning to fly over the Crescent Moon are rerouted, and we're in contact with nearby airfields to help direct their flights safely. Do they know about it? Maybe, but I doubt they understand the full extent of our setup. I saw you make a call before we left. Any news on the meeting with the junta? We should find out soon. Our command structure reaches all the way to the Pentagon, so we have a few steps to take before we can meet in person. In the meantime, there's a weekly session we host on base. It starts in 30 minutes and will be informative. 5 members made up the group. 3 Rough Riders of unspecified ranks, 1 colonel who seemed to be from the active army, and 3 technicians who monitor and analyze communications among the various groups preparing for the potential unrest. The sheriff, Paul Pavetto, Claude, and I also attended. The colonel opened the meeting by congratulating me for making it through a tough situation and dealing with the threat. I didn't correct him, but it made me curious about what Schur had done to Volkov. I hoped Schur meant what he said, and that his questions were straightforward. It was a long and interesting discussion, with several moments that stood out for me. The first good news was that the training for the new recruits was finished, and the next group was progressing quickly. The third group was set to start next Monday, and we had skilled operators ready for the HIMAR and SAM systems. The second piece of news was that all 6 helicopters and the 4 fixed-wing planes were fully operational, flown by experienced pilots. The fixed-wing planes were F-16 Falcons, which could engage in both air battles and ground support, along with electronic operations. In our high-tech environment, that was a very important ability. The third piece of news was a bit troubling. Conversations had greatly increased in the last few days. We were still analyzing the situation, but it seemed that the removal of Peter Volkov and the collapse of his group had left the rebels nervous and divided. One group believed they needed to act soon, while another felt they should wait for more weapons and resources. The rise of Tom Yonkers and Edward R. Lee to their new roles, replacing those who previously held them, made the idea of acting quickly more appealing. The pressure was also increased by A.G. Lee's ongoing removal of other supporters from the DOJ. Our analysts were forecasting that action could happen sooner rather than later, but not right away. Maybe during the period starting with Thanksgiving and ending after New Year's Day. We were about to end the meeting when I got a call from Tom, who asked me to stay put and put him on speaker. Just as I did, the door opened, and Dan, David, and Agent Shore walked in. It looked like setting up a meeting with top leadership wasn't as hard as Claude had suggested. After friendly greetings with Dan and David, I shared a warm hug with Agent Shore. 3 chairs were made available at the table, and Dan started connecting to the Secretary of Defense through a secure video call, telling me to hang up on him. We turned to face the large TV on the wall where we could see Tom, Attorney General Lee, 2 other men, and 2 women. Without further introductions, Secretary Yonkers began. Rob, you've missed a lot since you went to Hungary, but there has been a lot happening. Colonel, we allow you and everyone here to update Mr. McGregor on the events that have taken place and the decisions made, and to keep him informed until this challenging situation is resolved. General Lee and Director Vance will now brief all of you on what we know and what we think we know. Gentlemen. Lee nodded to Vance, who began to speak without any extra ceremony. People with extreme views from all sides of politics are coming together in a plan to take down our country's elected government. This includes groups like Nazis, fascists, and white supremacists, as well as anarchists and others who don't agree with the current system. I won't name every group, but it's clear that if they are part of the very small extreme sides of politics, they are taking part in this. Although they may seem like a mixed group of oddballs, they are actually well-armed and trained. Some of their training has come from unhappy former military members or military groups from other countries, such as North Korea and Russia. They have obtained weapons from many places, including North Korea and Russian sources, particularly one called Volkov, who is no longer involved in such activities. Some people in law enforcement are also part of this mix. We believe a few active military members are involved, but they are not in roles that could cause widespread danger. What unites them is their dislike for the federal government. Some want to overturn all elected officials and replace them with their own choices, while others just want to change how the government operates. They disagree on many issues, which makes their partnership weak. We know that Russia and North Korea are still sending them weapons and information, but with the loss of Volkov and his group, their supply lines have been seriously affected. Now that we understand the situation better, we have stopped several attempts to bring weapons into the country through our ports and airports, making things harder for them. Despite what you may hear, the idea that weapons are coming in through the southern border is not true. Most contraband, including illegal drugs, is moved mainly through trucks, ships, and planes. But today, that's not our focus. The ultimate goals of these groups are unclear and may vary depending on their location and makeup. From what we know, they aim to take over parts of some states like the western half of Texas and stir up unrest in other places that are not directly involved in the initial conflict. General Lee. Thank you, Director Vance. Since we cannot rely on all levels of law enforcement to resist and arrest these groups, we have formed special teams with carefully chosen officers and agents. These teams will take charge of law enforcement in certain areas. The authorities, along with many others, will follow the emergency plan that the president will announce as soon as the first shots are fired. Speaking for the president, I want to stress that we must put down this rebellion. We need to take control of all areas where the rebels have strong support and bring back order. Martial law will be declared in all areas of concern until we can manage the situation. Any questions? After a brief pause, I spoke up. General Lee, I have a few questions and a comment. May I? Please go ahead, Rob. State governors manage the National Guard and Air National Guard. Many guardsmen and state police are currently deployed along the Texas-Mexico border. What should we expect from them and the Texas Air National Guard? The room grew quiet as they looked at each other. Finally, one of the women replied, "We have reliable information that the governor of Texas is against any rebellion. Do you believe otherwise? All I know is what I hear from him on TV and in the news." My second question is, which side will the Border Patrol and ICE agents along the border and in the state side with? I have concerns based on past experiences. In one situation, they were told not to help when armed groups came to harm American citizens in their homes. In another case, they seemed to ignore a van with 3 kidnapped citizens crossing into Mexico at a busy border point, even after an alert was sent to all law enforcement, including the Border Patrol, by the local sheriff. No one wanted to answer that, but General Lee eventually spoke with the other woman and then said, "We have made changes to how Homeland Security and ICE operate at the national level to fix the problems you mentioned. We don't expect the federal officers' loyalty to be an issue right now." Your answers make me uneasy. I am sitting here in a base that is likely to be attacked, and we are less than 100 miles from the border. So let me clarify. You believe the governor will order the Guard to oppose the rebels, and you are. What? Hopeful that the Border Patrol leaders will do the same? Before I share my comment, please clarify. Again, there were exchanged looks among the group in Washington and those with me. "You've raised important questions, Rob," Secretary Yonkers said. "In our efforts to keep our plans for dealing with the rebellion secret, we seem to have not ensured that key parts of our response are prepared to act. With the dates approaching, we will address these matters right away. Thank you for bringing them up. Now, what do you think?" In the speeches of the rebels, no matter their political beliefs, there are ideas that speak to proud Americans who do not support rebellion, at least not right now. That includes me. This country has changed a lot since September 2001. Some changes are good, but not all. Without wanting to argue about politics, my observation is that most Americans will not accept more limits on personal freedom, like being watched by the government or the long-term presence of military law. It is very important to stop these mixed groups of hate and foreign fighters quickly and effectively. Many people already doubt whether our government is here to protect us or to control us. If Americans begin to question their government's ability to keep them safe, everything could change. However, if they see military or police officers working with the rebels, their hidden doubts about the government will come to light, and beliefs will shift. I believe that military law will be accepted during and right after the rebellion, just like it is after natural disasters. But this acceptance won't last long. When people start seeing officers, who are supposed to protect them, as their oppressors, and when they see friends and family taken away for unknown reasons, everything could change. I hope your plans for what happens after are as careful and thoughtful as your plans to defeat the rebels. The situation in this country is fragile. We don't want to win the fight and lose everything by what we do after the fighting ends. After this, not much was said, and the broadcast finished. Everyone turned to Rob, who met their gazes steadily. "Do you disagree?" he asked the Army colonel challengingly. The colonel smiled and shook his head. "No, and I am grateful we have someone bold enough to speak like that in front of high-ranking government officials. I heard you didn't care what people thought, but I didn't see it until now. Thank you for being honest." Claude patted him on the back and said, "Our boss has faced dangerous groups like Chechen fighters, Boko Haram, Mexican cartels, North Korean agents, and Russian leaders, not to mention tricky American officials. He's still here because he is smart, well-prepared, and a bit lucky. Telling him to accept things just because you hope they will be fine while not knowing is a good way to get the response they just received. It might get him on another list, but it could also make those in charge think about the real results of what they do. If it works, we will all benefit. How can we find out about the Guard, the Air Patrol, and the Border Patrol? Or is that possible? I asked. The Rough Riders can help us get those answers. I will look into it, Paul said. I turned to the Colonel and asked when we needed to meet again. We agreed to meet twice a week until we had more information and left it at that. On the way home, my phone rang. I didn't recognize the area code 737, so I let it go to voicemail. It was my realtor in Burnett, asking me to call her back. I did, explaining why I missed her call. She laughed and told me the new area code was for the quickly growing Austin Central Texas area, then explained why she called. The buyer wasn't too excited about your offer at first. He thought he could get a better price, but he hasn't, so he wants to know if your offer still stands. Has anything happened to the house or land that would change my offer? Not that I know of, but I would really like for you to visit it before you make your decision. He's not my favorite client. Is tomorrow or Sunday good? I can fly in with my family if you can pick us up, including a friend. She could pick us up on Saturday, and my family was happy when she shared her plans after school. Felix would join us too, even though there was no immediate threat. Grace and Dawes were used to flying now and brought things to keep them entertained when they got bored of looking out the windows. Rob spent most of the flight trying to get Caitlin to have a little fun in the restroom, but she wasn't interested with Felix and the kids around. As requested, the pilot flew over the potential property, circling around for another look while heading to the airport in Burnett. I thought the place looked as good as it did in the advertisements, but there were some signs of care that were lacking for the price. The airport was in the southern part of Burnett, along US 281. Valerie picked us up in a company van and took us west on TX-29, where we saw stunning views of the hill country, with pink granite hills and cliffs. We crossed the Colorado River and Inks Lake on a bridge near Buchanan Dam. The scenery was beautiful. She turned north onto a road that followed the lakeshore, past the Bluffton store, and then to Tow. Not like the toe, more like towel. We followed CR 222 past Fall Creek Vineyard, where it turned north along the shoreline. When the county road suddenly turned west, we took a private road going northeast. Most of the land we passed before reaching Bluffton was owned by the LCRA, the group that ran the lake. However, private land started around Bluffton and went north for many miles to Bend, where a state park was set up on the Colorado River, above Lake Buchanan. The piece of land we liked was located south of Fall Creek and stretched along the lake for about 3/4 of a mile. Most of this lakeside area had steep cliffs, but there was about 200 yards of beach made of granite gravel and coarse sand, surrounded by some bushes. The main road to the house needed more support and maintenance. Smaller, unpaved paths branched out from it, leading to unknown places. These might have been old roads from when the ranch was still whole before parts were sold off, as land prices had risen. This was happening across Texas, leading to a fast decline in both farmland and ranch land. This was not a good long-term trend for a state with a growing population. The house had seen better times. It seemed strong, with sturdy walls made of reinforced concrete covered with white stucco and a red tile roof that needed repairs. It had a large courtyard around a big swimming pool that required a lot of work. Inside was in better shape, but some of the big tiles needed replacing. The kitchen needed an upgrade, and there were water stains to fix after the roof was repaired. The potential was there, but our realtor's pictures and online listings were polished. Caitlin had mixed feelings. She recognized the possibilities, but also the effort needed. The kids were unsure. They definitely didn't want to swim in that pool, and the house had a strange, musty smell from being closed up. I suggested we take a look at the lake. The views there, along with the potential beach and the leftover boat dock, were much nicer. Clearing some brush and building a floating dock wouldn't take too much work, but we would be sharing the beach with others who wanted to swim. We drove back to the house and sat around a patio table while Felix took the kids out to explore. Valerie, before we go any further, I need an estimate from a contractor for the repairs. There's a lot to do, and I want to be sure it's worth the cost. She smiled. I expected that, Mr. McGregor, so I had my brother-in-law check the place out and prepare one. He runs a good construction company that focuses on remodeling and building lake properties, including docks and boathouses. She handed me the estimate, along with a revised contract that reduced our offer by half the repair costs. "Would this make it a better deal?" she asked. Caitlin and I went over the needed repairs, looked at the sale contract, and then shared a glance. "It could be really nice again," Caitlin suggested. I continued for her. "There are 5 large bedrooms and 4 bathrooms, which is great for when the house was built. The open layout is pleasant, and I like the big windows on the east side facing the lake. The main question is, do we need a 3rd house? This place is different from the others, but—" "I caught the we, honey," Caitlin said with a big smile. "If you don't have the money, I have some savings from the house sale in Houston. I could pay for half." "Does that mean you like it enough to buy it, fix it up, and decorate it? It will take some work." She thought for a moment and then said, "Yes, I do. There is something about this place in the hills that I like. I love our other homes, but this would be a nice change if we can afford it." "Okay, Valerie, now we move to the next step we talked about on the phone. Let's lower our offer by $110,000, please, and tomorrow you'll get a cash offer for $100,000 more from CC Enterprises in Austin. Give the owner both offers and let me know when he chooses CC Enterprises. Next, call the attorney who made the offer for CC Enterprises and let him know his client's offer is the winning one. He will handle it from there. I'll help with whatever information you need while Caitlin finds Felix and the kids who knows where they went," I said. "Now that you've decided on the property, would you like to join me for a boat tour of Lake Buck?" Valerie asked after we settled the details. "My brother-in-law and my husband are fishing, and they'll pick us up at the docks in tow. If you want, we can head upriver to the falls and down the lake to the dam. It's beautiful, and Tommy has a big boat that seats 11, so there's room for everyone." The boat ride was worth the trip. The views were amazing. We learned about the lake and river, and Doss and Grace had a great time on their first boat ride. Caitlin held on tight and screamed a bit as Tommy turned quickly, but the kids just laughed joyfully. We saw nesting sites for American bald eagles, the stunning Fall Creek waterfall, and smaller falls that have formed along the cliffs over the years. We stopped at Colorado Bend State Park and swam in the rapids. "Thanks for not taking us on the boat ride first. I would have paid too much for the house if you had," I told Valerie when we got back to the dock. "I can see I will need a boat once everything is ready." "Well, in that case, I'll add a ramp on the south side of the beach and fix the road to it," Tommy added. "You don't want to leave your boat tied up at the dock or even in a boathouse down there." The place felt too far away and too easy to break into, not to mention the severe floods that often sent boats to the dam or the bottom of the lake every few years. "Then I'll need storage at the house, right?" I asked. "Already on my list. I had a feeling you would like the place, Mr. McGregor, and I can see that your reputation for being decisive is well earned." He smiled at my confused expression, winked, and turned to my excited son. "Hey, Doss, what did you think when Daddy came to save you in Mexico?" "We were so excited we almost yelled when he took off the mask and showed us his face," my son shared. Caitlin and Grace looked shocked, but Doss ran over, hugged me tightly, and looked up at me like I was his hero. Tommy, his brother Sal, and Valerie all smiled at me. Valerie winked. "We kind of guessed it. What was on TV didn't match the stories from the oil field where Sal and Tommy used to work." "That's my story, and I'm sticking to it," I said seriously. They all laughed, including Caitlin. Felix sighed and shook his head. I didn't want any trouble, either here or in Mexico, and our safety was his job. "Caitlin, could you and Felix take the kids down the beach to check how deep it looks along the shore?" They quickly took the kids with them, and I turned to Val, Sal, and Tommy with a serious expression. I chose Valerie as my representative because she knows the area well and keeps things private. Since you know that story, you understand why secrecy is so important to me. Caitlin and I are not buying this place. A shell company behind other shell companies will. Our names must stay hidden, or we'll have to make it a lot more secure like we did at our other homes. I have serious enemies, and my wife and children could be in danger because of it. So, we need to go through Ron Connolly, the lawyer for CC Enterprises. Any questions, suggestions, or changes need to go to him, and he will respond quickly. Any questions? "No, we get it, and we will protect your privacy at all costs," Tommy answered, They wouldn't let us leave without taking us to a restaurant a few miles away. It was built over the lake and served fried and grilled catfish. "It's about 10 minutes from your dock by boat," Sal told us with a grin. Everything we ate was delicious, and there was a lot of it. We brought a takeout box of fried catfish to Gil, our pilot who was temporarily loaned to us while our regular one was learning to fly drones. We insisted he eat before flying us home, so it was nearly 9:30 when we neared the dark Crescent Moon field. Gil aligned the plane with the runway, and I started to feel anxious about landing in complete darkness. When he got close enough, the runway lights turned on, then went off as soon as he landed the plane. The only lights left were small ones on the edges of the runway and taxiway. It was a smart move, but I wish he had warned me before my heart started racing. Since I didn't get to share a special moment with Caitlin on the flight, we practiced in the shower in case we had another chance without so many people around. It took a few tries, but I think she's ready now. I just need a reason to fly back to Burnett or somewhere else. The deal was done, and CC Enterprises now owned a property by the lake. Valerie told me on Monday. He complained, but he accepted. We can finish the paperwork and close when you're ready. We're ready if Ron is. The money is set aside. How soon can Tommy start? I'm feeling more urgency since we last talked. He said he would start as soon as the paperwork is approved. His team is currently doing smaller tasks while waiting for yours to begin. On a related note, I really need you guys to come down soon so I can show you some things. Okay, any details? I asked for several reasons. No, you need to see these in person, she answered. We set a date, and she promised to text me the meeting place when we arrived. Her tone hinted there was more to it than just seeing something. Monday was a long day filled with calls to Romania and Hungary, a video call with Ashley, and an update from Colonel Adam Hoffman, who said the new recruits were excellent. The Rough Riders would be almost at full strength in 6 weeks. That night, I got Caitlin to practice again after the kids were in bed. This time, we were very in sync. I told her we were almost ready for our Thursday flight, but would need to practice the next 2 days to perfect things. Honestly, I was surprised at how strong and flexible she was. We can work together standing up or sitting down, although sitting on the toilet seemed uncomfortable. The standing position was a bit hard on my recovering legs, so we're making that our focus. One challenge we have is to keep things quiet because if I'm not kissing her, she tends to make a lot of noise. Tuesday, we had our scheduled meeting at Crescent Moon. Talk was increasing, but they were moving around, which meant our team had to keep tracking them down every few days. There was no sign that things would happen earlier than the week after Christmas. They were likely aiming for January 1st. Now I have to think about what to do with my family when that time comes. Maybe I should give Tommy a bonus for finishing quickly. It looks like we're very close to action here. The other updates were positive. The Rough Riders are well prepared for their tasks. We have good teamwork with the Texas Air National Guard and stay in touch with the Rangers to the north. Colonel Hoffman believes that the new recruits are the best he has seen, even better than those in the regular army. Many of them have recently served in the military, so they come trained and disciplined. I went home humming a song when I met an energetic woman who took me to a room where we spent hours together. I felt tired and hungry when I finally left in the afternoon. Luckily, I enjoyed enough food, played with 4 kids, and chatted with their uncles, Eva and Claude, for 6 hours. All that helped me get through my evening routine later. I started to think that letting her have 2 personal trainers for so long might not have been the best idea. On Wednesday, I woke up early, had coffee with others who were up, shared breakfast with the kids, and then rode to school with them. After that, I went to the Crescent Moon with the Green Team, where I caught up on my work and spoke with the COO. Things were looking positive for Hungary, and she planned to come over on January 2nd. I suggested it might be better for her to arrive on the 30th to prepare for everything. She agreed and asked if maybe Caitlin, the kids, and I should come along with her and her companion, Clay. She was considering inviting her parents, too. We both understood the importance of family and friends. I could have worked at home, but I found it hard to resist her charms since I returned. I wanted to have a productive day before taking tomorrow off. If we practiced and played all day today, I might struggle during the flight. She has always been quite energetic, and now she seems to have endless energy. I thought about helping her slow down a bit. With 3 hours left before the kids came back, I went to my place. I didn't see or hear Caitlin, so I asked Rosa if she knew where she was. She went upstairs after we had lunch with the gentlemen, Senor Rob. Oh, the older men are here? Where are they now? I don't know, Senor. They left after lunch. Caitlin helped me clean up and then they all went. Caitlin asked me to make enchilada casseroles for dinner and told me to go home when I was done. They are in the fridge, ready to cook. Do you need me any more today, Senor? I thanked her for her hard work and told her to go home to her family. She smiled and left. I walked to the stairs, grabbed the railing, and started to head up. 3 steps up, Howlin' Wolf's Back Door Man suddenly blared from the speakers in the recreation room above. I froze and looked up. Moving to the beat of the blues music was a performer. She wore a white lace-up top with frilly shorts and white thigh-high stockings, balancing on high heels as she danced playfully at the top of the stairs. Curly blonde hair peeked out from under a white hat, and she had on plenty of makeup. Her brows were dark and thick, with shiny blue eyeshadow and bright red lips. A white feather boa rested over her shoulders. She looked like a wild character come to life. Feeling awkward, I tried to adjust my clothing but found it too tight. Captivated by the dancer's moving form above, I loosened my pants to feel more comfortable, all while keeping my focus on the lively scene unfolding before me. I knew I couldn't climb the stairs like this, but I didn't want to look away as she moved with enthusiasm, bending and swaying as she looked at me from where she stood. I had seen many exciting performances in my life, from Carnival in Rio to shows in Paris, but nothing captivated me quite like this. She twirled around and moved her hips, matching the music perfectly. The expression on her face sparked a rush of excitement in me. I held onto my pants and took another step, eager to get closer to this wonderful sight. I wanted to see more. My whole being felt alive. When the music shifted, I kicked off my shoes and stepped out of my pants. I was now just a few feet away from her, and I couldn't take my eyes off her lively dance as she pranced, moved, and grooved to the energetic music, looking as if she was in a dream. As the song drew to a close, she danced toward the door of the rec room and struck a pose in the doorway. When the music stopped, she jumped inside and shut the door. I crossed the space to the door and found it locked. "Open the door," I called out. "No," she replied. "Why not?" "Because you might have some wild ideas if I do. I'm young, but I see the intensity in your eyes. You're a real threat." "You're right. Open the door or I'll make my way in. Will you leave me alone after? I'm just here to earn some money. I'm not less than anyone. I have an offer for you right here. Just open the door." She was scared but unlocked it. When I opened the door, she stepped back into the room, holding her arms across herself, clearly nervous. She looked like a frightened young girl caught unaware. "Come collect your tip," I said with a smile. "Oh no, that's too much for me," she replied, her eyes wide. I moved toward her even with my limp. She gasped and dashed behind the couch. As stunning as Ashlyn seemed in that motel room, the situation felt dynamic and exciting. I pretended to go one way, she jumped the other. I hurried to grab her but missed. She stayed at the far end, looking cautious but curious. Moving closer, she shifted behind the couch. I faked a move, right? She went left and I leaped over the couch to catch her. She screamed and resisted, showing surprising strength. With a boost of energy, I pulled her back and onto the couch. She kept resisting, so I leaned over her gently. She squirmed realistically, but not enough to break free. As I held her still, I felt the tension in the air. I leaned in and said, "Sometimes we all need to face the music for our choices." She looked at me defiantly, her lips just inches from mine. "You're just talking. Prove you can really back it up." I kissed her before she could respond. She tried to bite me but seemed to change her mind. I held her wrists, surprised by how the moment was shifting. "Let's see some real dancing this time," I suggested, keeping the playful mood alive. "I want to see you in just the white stockings and heels," I said. She looked towards the door as if considering making a quick exit, but I stepped in front of her, blocking the way. "Don't even think about it," I warned. "Now turn the music back on and start dancing." As soon as the music filled the room, her demeanor changed. She went from nervous to confident, moving with grace and energy. She began undoing the laces of her corset, her eyes on me the entire time, her movements slow and teasing. There was a playful rhythm to her actions, as though she was taking control of the moment. Her movements grew bolder, and I watched as she slowly revealed glimpses of her toned figure beneath the corset. The confidence in her steps made it hard to look away. She spun around, her back to me, and slipped off the corset. Her dance continued, becoming even more energetic as she moved, her body showing strength and beauty in every motion. Unable to resist any longer, I stepped forward and reached for the waistband of her panties. She stepped out of them with ease, still moving in sync with the music. The playful energy between us continued, lighthearted but full of anticipation. I pulled her closer, but instead of pulling away, she leaned into me, allowing the moment to carry us both. Her breath was quick, and I could tell she was as caught up in the energy as I was. We shared a close moment, the connection between us growing as we moved together. Everything else seemed to fade away, and we were left in that shared rhythm, the music guiding us. She smiled, and I knew that we were both completely lost in the moment. After some time, we paused, catching our breath, the room still filled with the soft hum of music. There was no need for words as we both relaxed, letting the calm settle over us. The playful tension from before had given way to a quiet, shared peace, and the night continued on, the energy between us now more relaxed and comfortable. The scene shifted as she stood before me, her confidence evident. I watched as she moved with a grace that left no room for doubt. She was fully in control of the moment. I knelt, and without hesitation we shared a quiet connection, her presence filling the space. Her reactions grew stronger as time passed, and it was clear she was completely caught up in the experience, her soft words turning into pleas for more. I kept things gentle and focused, making sure she was comfortable. Her responses showed just how much she trusted me, her breathing quickening with every touch. There was a sense of anticipation building, and soon it felt like time slowed down for both of us as we stayed close. A moment later I stood, meeting her gaze as she softly asked for more. The connection between us deepened as we moved together, every movement deliberate and shared. I made sure to keep things light and playful, ensuring that we both remained in the moment, lost in the rhythm we had created. As the moment continued, I knew it was time to fulfill my earlier promise. I playfully tapped her, making sure to keep everything lighthearted and fun. Her responses were filled with laughter and joy, not pain, as we shared in the experience together. We continued like this for some time, both of us caught up in the energy of the moment. It was clear we were fully in sync, and everything felt effortless. The trust between us was palpable, and we let the moment carry us forward. Afterward, she slumped down on the couch, completely relaxed, her energy spent. I smiled, knowing that this shared experience had brought us even closer. Without hesitation, I picked her up gently, despite the strain it caused, and carried her to our bedroom. She curled up under the covers, shivering slightly as I wrapped a blanket around her. I kissed her on the cheek and quietly went to clean up. When I returned, I slipped into bed beside her, spooning gently against her back. We both drifted off to sleep, content in the quiet of the night. Sometime later, she stirred, pressing closer to me. I kissed her ear softly and whispered, "Hey, what brought that on?" She stretched slowly, smiling as she turned to face me. "Did you enjoy that?" she asked, a playful giggle escaping her lips. "I did," I replied with a smile. "It's another side of you that I didn't expect. What made you decide to try something new today?" She settled against me, her head resting under my chin, and with a soft voice she began to explain. "Ashley, I wanted to show you that I could be more than just your ex-wife and the mother of your kids. I know you say your relationship with her is over, but she is so attractive that I worry you might still think about her when you're in the mood, or that maybe she is the reason you feel that way when you are with me. That might have been why you were acting that way at the top of the stairs, getting ready to impress someone. But when the music started, you transformed completely. I have never seen anything like it. You weren't competing with anyone while you danced and played around. You embodied temptation. Honestly, after that, it's hard to think of you as just a regular mom. You looked up at me, and I noticed that spark in your eyes. A sly smile appeared on your lips. So you don't see me as boring? You think I'm attractive? Come on! If you performed like that at a club, you'd be showered with money and have a long line of people wanting to see you. Your smile grew wider, and you giggled as you pulled me closer. I was prepared for what might come next, but a loud shout from a child running up the stairs stopped us. You quickly jumped out of bed and rushed to the closet. Quick, go into the bathroom and get dressed. The kids are back. I thought we were caught, but followed your instructions. The kids ran past our room and into one of their bedrooms. You came out of the closet in a cozy pink outfit, brushing your hair. I had put on gray sweatpants in the bathroom. We need to get dinner ready so the kids can eat. I wanted to say something, but didn't. So I followed you down the stairs to the kitchen. Just as I reached the bottom, I heard cheers and clapping. You stood in the doorway while all the family members were there. Eva, Claude, Clay, Felix, and Armando waiting in the kitchen and dining area. Claude was filming you with his phone, and Ava held a trophy that looked like an award labeled Best Actress. You did amazing today, Kate. You're sure to win an award, but you'll need a stage name, Claude said. And we can't wait to see you even in a comfy outfit, he added with excitement. Do you want to use this table or the one on the patio? Clay stood beside Eva, holding a photo of Caitlin at the top of the stairs, just printed from the laser printer. Caitlin looked at the picture, frowned, and asked, "How did you get that?" "I turned off the security cameras when Rob got home." Claude chuckled, and the others laughed along. "Sorry, honey. We must have forgotten to tell you the code you need to enter after turning them off, or they turn back on in 3 minutes. Anyway, a performance like that had to be saved. Millions will remember you after seeing it. Truly amazing." I noticed Uncle looked a bit shy about the teasing, but they were enjoying her reaction. "Are you ready now? We sent the kids upstairs to play," Claude continued. "It would be a shame not to add another performance while your makeup is still on. Climb on the table. I'll film it with my phone." With her mouth open, she turned to the mirror by the china cabinet and realized she hadn't removed her stage makeup. She gasped and ran for the downstairs bathroom just as the 4 children were coming down the stairs. "Mom!" Grace exclaimed in surprise. "Why are you wearing makeup like that?" Ignoring her daughter, Caitlin rushed into the bathroom and shut the door. The confused kids came into the room where we were. Grace looked at me and asked, "Dad, why is Mom wearing makeup like that?" Thinking quickly, I said, "It's almost Halloween. She's thinking about dressing up as a cat, like in the musical, or maybe Catwoman from the movie." "Oh," she replied, then changed the topic. "We're going to play Foursquare on the patio with our new ball. They taught us in gym class when it rained. Want to come watch?" "I'm hungry. Have you guys eaten?" "Yes, Uncle Armando got us pizza because the enchiladas weren't ready. Come outside after you eat." Caitlin came out of the bathroom with her face fresh and walked into the dining area with her head held high. "I know I won't live this down, but please let me eat in peace tonight. I'm so hungry." Ava felt sorry for her. "All we've seen is your performance at the top of the stairs, with the rest blurred out. Claude turned it off as soon as you shut the door, saying the rest wasn't appropriate for anyone under 18 or over 60, so he, Clay, and whoever else was watching are the only ones who saw the whole thing. But what I saw was very impressive. I had no idea you could move like that." Caitlin smiled at Eva, then shot a glare at the Edwards brothers. Clay quickly defended himself. "Hey, I closed my eyes. Look at Claude, Armando, and Felix," she said. They just winked and smiled. By the end of the big meal, Caitlin felt proud of her new nickname and seemed okay with my hand resting on her leg under the table. "Stop that, or I'll take you back upstairs," she whispered while shifting a bit closer. I gave her a gentle squeeze on her thigh and winked back, but took my hand away. She looked a bit let down. After the kids and their uncles were asleep, we joined the younger adults in the living room. "I want to see what you showed everyone else," she insisted to Claude. The smile on his face lit the room. "I told you all. Caitlin isn't shy at all. She's proud of her performance." She playfully swatted at him, but seemed to enjoy his tease. He grabbed the remote, hit play, and everyone quieted down. I knew what was about to happen, but it somehow felt more interesting on screen. Caitlin sat beside me on the big sofa, leaned forward, and focused on the lively person on the screen. "Should I show the part in the recreation room?" Claude asked, as a door slammed in the video. She nodded, and we watched her playfully tease me from behind the door, then move into the middle of the room, acting innocent. When I suddenly leaped onto the couch and grabbed her arm, I said, "Hit stop! The rest of this is too much for everyone, so everyone else should go to bed." "Come on, boss, we were just getting to the good parts," Claude said, but he hit pause. The screen froze with me in an awkward position and Caitlin's shocked face. Out, I said firmly. Eva complained, "You're no fun." And Felix added, "Since I've already seen it, can I stay? I want to watch it again." I sent everyone away except for Caitlin. By then, she was getting quite involved. I leaned close and whispered, "This isn't just acting. This is a peek into something special, Caitlin's moment. Can you handle it now that it's out?" She didn't reply, but she started moving faster, clearly getting caught up in the mood. I didn't sleep much that night. I thought I handled everything earlier, but maybe she had a point. I wasn't awake super early, but I was up early enough to see the kids off and talk to Claude about the DVD and the hard drive where that fun performance was kept. After taking care of what we needed to do, I did some exercises on my list and then went back upstairs. "Time to wake up, sleepyhead. The kids are already at school and we have places to be and things to do." She groaned, turned onto her stomach and covered her head with a pillow. I decided to try a little trick and started tickling her. That got her up and moving, squealing and rushing to the bathroom. After that, she locked the door and got in the shower. 10 minutes later, I heard the water turn off, so I went downstairs for more coffee and to warm up the breakfast tacos Rosa made earlier. She might have won last night's argument, but now we were even. I wasn't sure I would win this time, but I knew I would enjoy trying. The longer she took to get ready this morning, the better my chances, or at least that's what I hoped, since she might be tired from last night's activities. She was dressed in a black pencil skirt and a white blouse, looking professional, but the skirt could have been a bit longer and the blouse a little less thin. The tan tights looked nice, but she probably could have buttoned one less button and chosen a different bra. She looked great and confident. Yet again, Felix was driving. He raised his eyebrows at her and said, "Wow, what do you have planned for this flight, since the kids and I aren't going?" She smiled. Caitlin paused as we got out of the car and walked toward the small airplane. She was carrying her makeup bag and a garment bag, ready for a short flight. "This isn't your plane, did you get a new one?" she asked as we reached the steps. "I traded for this one. It's more comfortable and can fly almost 2,500 miles before needing to refuel. I think you'll like it." The steps were down and the door was open. We had a new pilot. She might not have been as flashy as Caitlin or Ashley, but she definitely caught my attention. "And you are?" I asked. "I'm Adrian, your new pilot. Gil is a former pilot who has joined the Rough Riders and is busy with training today. I left the Air Force less than 6 months ago, after finishing my training not long before that." "Retire? After one tour of service? You can't be over 25. "Thank you, Mr. McGregor, but I'll be 30 on December 16th, and I completed 2 tours after graduating from the Air Force Academy." "Hello, Adrienne. I'm Caitlin," my friend said. "Rob is so busy staring and being charming that he forgot his manners. He's like that around attractive women." "I'm very glad to meet you, Caitlin, and I must say, he certainly knows a pretty woman when he sees one. You are stunning, and you don't look old enough to drink." "I'm your age, but thank you for the compliment. I'm his ex-wife and the mother of his 2 kids, so he doesn't pay much attention to me anymore. Just give him a slap if he steps out of line, or call me and I'll handle it." Adrian said it playfully, knowing full well she was joking. After all, we'd spent the last 15 hours pretty much together. She looked sharp in her tailored navy pants and white blouse, and with her blue eyes and curly black hair, she had a confident air about her. I could tell my body language gave away my light-hearted mood. "I hear this is your first time flying on this plane, Mr. McGregor. Would you like me to show you around before we take off?" she asked. "Not unless you start calling me Rob," I replied with a smile. "All right, Rob, but only if you call me Addie. Now, may I give you the tour?" I had only seen the layout in videos, so I was just as curious as Caitlin to check it out in person. The furniture was custom-ordered and adjustable, so we were pleasantly surprised by the spacious, overstuffed leather seats. The first 4 seats faced forward, while the next 4 faced each other. Near the bathroom was a pair of couches across the aisle from each other, and past that there was a sofa bed with a curtain for privacy in case anyone wanted to sleep, or, as Addie hinted, for other purposes. Caitlin's eyes lit up when she saw the sofa bed, and she let out a little giggle. Addie caught on and laughed too. "Exactly what I thought when I first saw it Airborne Boudoir," she said with a wink. She noticed the smirk on my face before I could hide it. "If you're ready, sir, she's all set for her maiden flight. The plane, I mean," she added with a teasing tone. Though we had just met and she was new, Addie had a confident, bold attitude. It wasn't intimidating. In fact, it was more like a friendly challenge. Caitlin seemed to like her as well, judging by the playful smiles they exchanged. As we followed Addie to the front of the plane, I couldn't help but admire her confidence, and Caitlin must have read my thoughts because she gave me a playful pinch. Once we were strapped in, Addie started the engines and taxied to the runway. The plane took off smoothly and she began talking over the intercom about the plane's features. She explained that it had a range of over 2,500 miles and could fly at 300 knots. She rattled off a long list of safety features, but honestly, I zoned out a little, lost in the excitement of the flight. 10 minutes into our 70-minute trip, Addie's cheerful voice came over the intercom, announcing that we were free to move about the cabin. She even suggested we check out the different seating areas and couches. We moved around, testing the various spots, first the facing seats, then the couches, and finally the back couch. I sat down, and Caitlin, with a mischievous smile, pulled the curtain closed, unzipped her skirt, and asked, "Why did you have me practicing standing in a cramped bathroom when we've got this luxurious bed?" "Well," I replied, grinning, "first I like standing up with you in the shower, and second, I didn't think the plane would get here in time." "You can thank Gil for that. He flew the old plane out and brought this one back. Now get ready, we have less than an hour." By the time she tossed her top onto the pile with our clothes, I was already taking off my shirt and pants. She looked down at me with a playful smile and said, "I want everything, even if we have to finish on the way back." With that, she asked me to lie down. She settled close to me and we shared a moment together, lost in each other's warmth for about 10 minutes. Just as it felt like it was going too far for both of us, she pulled back with a laugh and said, "No way, we don't have time for that, and I want to make this a memorable day." She shifted positions and playfully leaned down closer. I could tell she was feeling quite sensitive, and she began to make soft sounds as she moved closer to me, her excitement growing. I held her close, helping her find a rhythm as she adjusted her movements. Her hands braced against my chest, keeping everything close, yet stopping me from getting too carried away. It seemed like a natural response when I leaned closer. She lowered herself enough for me to graze her gently. It was a little teasing, and I enjoyed being close to her. My hand traveled along her back, squeezing gently. She responded with a soft sound, and I could tell she was very invested in making the moment special. At one point, realizing how much we were enjoying ourselves, I joked, "What's wrong? Still not ready to stop?" She didn't answer right away, but the look on her face showed she was definitely feeling it. I could tell I was hitting the right spots, and she began to cheer me on with her encouraging words. I needed to keep my balance, so I said, "Use one hand to enjoy what you have and the other to explore." "Do it." Her eyes looked distant, but she followed the instructions. I was surprised by how she handled herself, especially in areas I didn't expect. I had no idea she could stretch that far without discomfort. She was touching herself lightly, and I found myself watching with interest as her expression changed. Then suddenly she seemed to lose her strength. "Well, can the plane fly itself while I help Addie? I really need to finish this." The speakers played Addie's soothing voice. 15 minutes to landing." I shook Caitlin awake to share the news. She instantly perked up and grabbed her makeup bag. From it, she pulled out some large wet wipes. "Use this one to clean yourself, this one for the couch, and then spray this cologne on." She tidied herself up and put on my favorite scent before quickly dressing. She went to the restroom to comb her hair and returned looking just as good as before. I was impressed by how quickly she transformed. We took our seats behind the cockpit and listened to the pilot go through the landing checklist. She landed the plane smoothly and taxied to our designated area. A larger vehicle was parked nearby. When the engine stopped, a man placed blocks around the wheels, and she stood up. "Before we get out, I have an award to give," she said with a smile. "Caitlin, please stand." Caitlin stood up, and Addie pinned a pair of golden wings onto her shirt. The wings had a light blue circle in the center with white clouds and a small airplane. A tiny banner at the top read, "Mile High Club." Caitlin blushed but smiled as she received the award. After finishing, Addie stepped back to admire Caitlin and said, "I must say, kitten, that was the most impressive entry to the club I've ever seen. Congratulations." Also, I need to call out your "my ex doesn't notice me" story. If that's not enough attention, feel free to find someone better. I think I would enjoy being ignored like you say he does. Turning to me, she added, Rob, I thought you might have a pin already, but if not, I can get you one. That was quite a performance. She pulled a bag from the compartment above the front seats and continued. So impressive, in fact, I need to change out of these wet clothes, freshen up, and put on a skirt. I apologize for being out of uniform, but it's necessary right now. Rob chuckled at her playful attitude while watching Caitlin smile wider. Do you need a wet wipe? I have some in my bag. If you don't mind. I've never felt so excited during a flight before. From now on, whenever I fly with you two, I'll wear a skirt and take some extra precautions. Caitlin laughed, found the wipes, and handed them to Addie. Why did you call me Kitten? It was either that or something more playful. I don't know you well enough for the other name yet, but it seems fitting. Am I right? She asked with an eyebrow raised. Kitten's look seemed to agree, but she answered, Maybe. I don't know you well enough to talk about that yet, but I think we will become good friends. Do you need help cleaning up? Addie looked at her, then at me, and said, Maybe not today. I'm unsure if Rob is okay with our new friendship yet. She winked at me and then Caitlin, saying, I'll see you both when you get back. Nope. Clean up, change, and you're coming with us. And bring your gear. She blinked, then headed to the back with her bag. Oh, it smells wonderful in here, she said, smirking at Kitten, who just smiled back. Are you two flirting? I asked in surprise. Do I have to worry about both sides of the friendship now? Caitlin turned red and quickly denied it. My phone beeped with a message just as Addie opened the curtain and walked down the aisle. The text read, Johnson Park in Marble Falls near the playground. I noticed Addie's skirt and thought, she's quite confident. I turned and walked to the open doorway with Caitlin glancing at me before following. I reached the bottom of the stairs and watched both of them come down, and I caught a glimpse of their smiles. It seemed they were enjoying themselves. These new friendships could be intriguing. Addie gave instructions to the team outside, who were looking at the new plane and the two women. She locked the cabin and handed me the keys when one of them came over. I opened the SUV. Is this Valerie's? Caitlin asked. No, I bought it to get from the airport to the place, but we're meeting Valerie at a park in Marble Falls. Don't ask why she's being secretive. It has bench seats if you both want to sit in the front, or maybe in the back after all that laughter. They exchanged glances and giggles, but climbed into the front seat. They seemed a bit too carefree about their skirts riding up while they sat, which made me frown. I glanced down at their legs, then looked back up while keeping my frown. They all started laughing, and Caitlin said, Your frown doesn't work at all with that sparkle in your eyes. Plus, you should focus on the road you're driving. Once I was on the highway and had the cruise control set, I casually rested my right hand on Caitlin's thigh, which was just above the hem of her skirt. She and Addie watched me, then shared another laugh. So when you said he rarely notices me anymore, you meant he can't keep his hands to himself? And by the way, you get the front seat on the way back, she joked. Their giggles continued until I moved my hand slightly, which made Caitlin freeze and look down at me. Addie glanced between my hand and Caitlin. If you want to sit in the front now, we can switch places, Addie said. Caitlin playfully squeezed my hand with her legs. Stop it now, or I'm going to be in trouble when we get to the park, she half laughed. I couldn't help but smile at her. Valerie, Sal, Tommy, and another man were at a picnic table under a pecan tree that still had many of its leaves left because of the warm autumn. KFC buckets were spread out on the table, and they invited us to join them for lunch. After we exchanged names, Sal noticed the golden wings pinned on Caitlin's shirt and smiled knowingly. Did you enjoy your flight? He asked with a grin. Caitlin blushed, and Addie quietly snickered. I did, Caitlin replied, her face still red. Rob has a new plane, so this was what he called her first flight. She playfully glared at Addie, who sank her head and chuckled again. The plush seats even recline. And there are 3 couches and a privacy area, Addie added with a wink, making Caitlin blush even more. The others smiled at her, and Valerie whispered, Congratulations. That exchange brought us all closer as we dug into the fried chicken and side dishes while chatting lightly. However, The light chatter slowed down once we finished eating. Valerie and George, the other man, exchanged serious glances, and Valerie cleared her throat. George, Sal, and Tommy are very into their hobbies. They spend lots of time at the range each week, trying out new gear and chatting with fellow enthusiasts. These three have all served at least one tour in the military and have experience overseas. They've also been to various places that we probably shouldn't name right now. With that, I'll let them take the lead. George looked like the group's spokesperson as they all turned to him, and he cleared his throat to start speaking. We love guns, but we're not crazy, and we're not traitors. We fought for our country and will do so again if needed. However, we also know it's best to listen carefully when others with different thoughts try to share their views, especially when they want to pull us into their way of thinking. That conversation happened on Sunday afternoon, and we had a meeting that night. We might not know you well, Mr. McGregor, but we've heard from people who do, calling themselves Rough Riders now. They spoke highly of you and recommended we meet in person. He paused and looked into my eyes and then at my female friends. I don't see any confusion, and I haven't excluded Miss Addie and Miss Caitlin. Can I continue? I nodded, and he went on. We gathered names and contact details from folks we spoke to on Sunday. Since we're unsure about our electronic safety, I'll give you a paper copy with the leftover food after we're done. The main point is that they are part of a small group connected to a larger group aiming to challenge the government. They warned that this could happen soon. None of this seems to shock you, so let's see if this does. You, Mr. McGregor, are high on their list of those they consider enemies in their fight against what they call tyranny. Caitlin frowned and glanced at Rob, who just shrugged. I've upset their plans a few times, especially recently, so I'm not too surprised. How strong are they in this area? I was considering this place instead of West Texas for my family. Tommy replied, We don't really know. They claim there are groups in Lampasas and San Saba counties too. Many people in Lampasas work or are stationed at Fort Hood and Killeen, and I doubt they are involved. We can't guess their numbers or resources. The ones we know have a lot of semi-automatic weapons and plenty of ammunition, but I can't speak to more advanced weapons. If we tried to blend in, we might find out more, but I'm not sure how I can pretend to agree with their ideas. I turned to our realtor. Is this why you wanted to speak to us, Valerie? Yes, but I also want to show you a house on Lake LBJ that is for sale. Since you were outbid on the Lake Buchanan home, this is another option that could draw attention away from the other property. I've heard they might be watching you, and there could even be someone in your group, so I thought this might help you. This house isn't as big, and it will need some work, but it's a great investment opportunity. If you buy it, it can distract them. Once you fix it up and sell it later, you could make a profit. It also gives us a chance to keep talking with you just in case. Would you like to take a look? We were interested, but the three men went back to their tasks. Tommy had already seen the place and had prepared an estimate, so he didn't need to stay. The house needed a lot of work, and the floods a few years ago caused significant damage to the boathouse, dock, and the plants along the shoreline. Still, the location was great, and there was a lot of potential. I called Ashley, gave her Valerie's contact info, and asked her to handle it for me. I hope this purchase will attract their interest so we can enjoy our property on Lake Buck without too much worry. However, considering what we now know, we will need security. Valerie, you said Grandpa left the ranch to his son and 3 grandchildren, so it was split into quarters. Who owns the part closest to us? A daughter who lives beyond her means and would be open to any reasonable offer from what I've learned. Why do you ask? Does CC Enterprises need more land for their retreat? Maybe. Please reach out to her as a possible listing agent to see if she's interested in selling. I'm sending some men to check out the area and figure out how to secure the place. They will do an aerial survey first, but then they'll need to be on the ground for a day or two. How can we do this without alerting the workers at the house? A survey crew could check the boundaries. No one usually pays attention to them, and it might actually be needed. Great idea. We have surveyors we can send, thank you. I had an Explorer stored in the hangar I rented, and we were in the air by 6. It would be dark in West Texas, but our plane and pilot made that seem like nothing. The lightheartedness from the morning was gone on the flight back, and Kitten's plans for more fun were never mentioned. Instead, the 3 of us talked about the mutiny against tyranny, and the risks in Burnett compared to Fort Davis or Study Butte. It was a serious afternoon, especially after the excitement from earlier. The next morning brought cooler weather and rain to the high desert, which was welcome and necessary. Caitlin used the time to make lists, tasks for both lake houses, plans for Halloween, Thanksgiving, and Christmas, and the pros and cons of staying here or going elsewhere as the mutiny approached. I spent the morning with Claude and Colonel Hoffman thinking about the possibility of a spy among us, wondering who or what it could be. Is there someone in our group who knows too much? Or are we being watched by a system so clever that we can't notice it? Or both? We made our own list, and Claude directed the tech team in San Antonio to look into it. He also asked them to send a couple of guys here to gather information. We had lunch in the cafeteria with some of the staff, and I pretended to be a clueless property owner who thought this was just a training center. I doubt anyone important believed me, but since not many trainees know me, it was worth a shot. Claude sent a secure email to Secretary Yonkers at 11 and got a reply just after 1. He agreed to meet with us for a secure video call from 3:25 to 3:40, so I spent the time chatting with Ashley. From her, I learned that chances in Eastern Europe were improving quickly, so she was planning to fly to Hungary after Thanksgiving. She intended to continue on to Romania for a very early conversation with an important government official and the owner of a big oil and gas company. Her sense was that some initial doubts were fading as the idea became more accepted, so I might need to act sooner than I thought. It had been a hectic day, but I stopped by the clinic at closing to see if Dr. Ava could talk for a few minutes. She was winding down when the receptionist brought me in and then left. Ava seemed surprised, but greeted me with a warm smile and asked about my day. When I told her, she laughed, shook her head, and offered to help. I accepted, and we spent another 20 minutes brainstorming before her phone rang, reminding her she was late for dinner. Halloween was 2 weeks away, and it was on a Thursday this year. Since Friday was a teacher training day, the kids didn't have school, and training didn't start until 10 a.m. at SRSU in Alpine. To make it even better, the junior high and JV football teams were not playing that week, which meant the field and parking were free. The district superintendent and principals liked my idea and promised that each class would set up a booth, table, or game. The party rental company was hesitant at first, but after we agreed on mileage and an extra fee for setup and takedown, their representative became excited about the possibilities. I sent him a map of the space available and told him to be creative, and he promised they would arrive early Thursday morning to set up. The Marfa teachers were also training in Alpine on November 1st, and neither Marfa nor Alpine had community events planned for Halloween, so I asked the Fort Davis administrators to invite their schools if they thought it was a good idea. They agreed. Eva took charge of getting the costumes for our families and friends through Amazon. I had only one request, and she had already sorted that out. We both laughed, and Ava mentioned that there might be more than one of those costumes, but ours would be special anyway. Meanwhile, back at the farm, Kitten only came out to play after the kids were in bed. She woke up early, made sure the children were ready and fed, worked out with Felix, went for a run, had video calls with her therapist on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and kept in touch with Tommy or Sal every day or two about improvements for the lake house. She also emailed a lawyer in Austin every other day, who then passed the information to Tommy. She had been quite reserved in her affection for the last few days. On Saturday morning, I whispered, "How about we try something a little special tonight? I'm excited to spend time with Kitten." She smiled, gently touched my face, and warned, "You should be careful what you wish for." I winked back at her. I worked out early and saw her chatting with Eva when I returned from the gym. The day went on as usual. The uncles visited, and Claude, Clay, and I took the kids to a special spot we found in the foothills near the 6,400 ranch. A spring bubbled up from the ground, flowed along a rocky path, and disappeared just before another rise. Doc turned it into a learning moment, encouraging the kids to discuss what the underground water might look like. He even wondered if there might be a secret cave on the property where we could see the water. We searched for a while but didn't find anything, though the kids wanted to try again soon. Afterward, I was dropped off at home, Eva hopped in, and 3 SUVs left for a children's fair at the courthouse in Alpine. With a teasing smile, Eva told me that Caitlin was upstairs waiting for me. My heart raced as I hurried into the house. The last time we were alone one afternoon, things had gotten interesting. When I was on the third step, a woman in a long black skirt and white blouse appeared on the landing. Her hair was styled in a bun, and she wore glasses. She looked like an old-school teacher, standing with hands on her hips and a ruler in one hand, looking a bit stern. She was the most eye-catching teacher I'd ever seen, with bold makeup and glossy lips. She tapped the ruler against her other palm, and suddenly a song called "Hot for Teacher" blared from the speakers. A big smile spread across my face, and the teacher started moving to the beat. She beckoned me with her finger, twirled around, and went into the rec room. I quickly followed her. She was in the middle of the room, moving playfully and keeping rhythm with the ruler. She gestured for him to sit on the sofa, then moved along the wall, as if erasing something from an imaginary chalkboard. Suddenly, she turned and stepped up onto the coffee table that was just a couple of steps away. With each beat of the music, she began to unbutton her blouse, her movements in sync with the rhythm. Slowly, she pulled the blouse free from her skirt, revealing more of herself as she danced. She twirled the blouse around, tossing it in his direction, and he caught it with a grin. He followed her lead, casually removing his shirt and setting it aside. Next, she unzipped her skirt, allowing it to slip down her hips and legs as she swayed to the music. When it finally pooled at her feet, she stepped out of it, leaving only her black thigh-high stockings and heels. She gave him a teasing smile, letting him take in the moment before spinning around to show him her graceful movements. Her confidence filled the room as she shook her hair loose and continued her playful dance. By the time the music ended, both were smiling, caught up in the fun energy between them. Breathing slightly heavier from the effort, she stepped off the table and made her way toward him, climbing onto the sofa beside him. He responded to her closeness, wrapping his arms around her in a gesture of appreciation. They shared a quiet moment of connection, filled with warmth and closeness. The room was quiet now, and they both seemed to be content in that shared space. Playfully, they continued to enjoy each other's company, expressing their appreciation for the time spent together. The energy in the room remained light and fun, and they both knew they had created a memorable moment between them. By the end of the evening, the sofa, now a place where they had shared laughter and joy, stood as a reminder of their time together. Tomorrow, things would return to normal, but for tonight, they were simply enjoying each other's presence. Feeling frustrated, he playfully nibbled on her shoulder, making her gasp and lean away to ease the discomfort. "Hey, you can't tease me and hurt me at the same time," she complained, frowning. He flashed a mischievous smile and pulled her closer. They wrestled, but he managed to hold her tight. "Are you really going to play games with me?" he teased, giving her a gentle but firm pat on her back that made her squirm. She tried to get away, but he wrapped his arm around her waist, keeping her close. "If you don't stop playing around, I might just turn you around and give you a little taste of discipline," he warned lightheartedly. Part of her was curious about that playful challenge. She wanted to play along, but worried it might lead to unexpected surprises they didn't plan for. Before she knew it, she found herself playfully leaning in closer, both of them caught up in the fun of the moment. They shared laughter and excitement, lost in their own world. As the Monday before Halloween arrived, the children came home buzzing with joy about the upcoming Halloween carnival and dance on Thursday. "Our class is running a fishing booth for the little ones," Grace declared with enthusiasm. Esme added, "We have poles with buckets attached, and we hide treats in the buckets for them to find." Dawes joined in. "Our class has a duck pond. For a quarter, you can pick a duck from the pond, and you win a prize based on the number underneath. It's for kids of all ages, even Grace and Esme," Tavo excitedly mentioned. "Every grade has something fun planned, even the high schoolers." "And we heard there will be bounce houses and slides," Grace added. "Mommy, what are we going to wear?" Esme asked with worry. "We don't have any costumes." "Oh, yes, we do," Eva replied with a big smile. "But you'll have to wait until Halloween to see them. Mr. Rob asked me to order costumes for everyone, and I did. We're going to look amazing." The next few minutes were filled with playful begging, but no hints were given. Then Grace had a great idea. "We know what Mommy's costume is. Can you tell us what ours will be?" Caitlin looked surprised and confused. She turned to her daughter and asked, "What is my costume?" Daddy said you were trying on all that eye makeup for Halloween because you were going as Catwoman. Or was it just a cat? Anyway, are we going to be cats too? Eva chimed in, saying they would find out on Halloween, but only if they behaved and stopped asking. If they didn't, she joked that she would take some old sheets and make them dress up as ghosts. Grace covered her mouth and rolled her eyes, then told the other kids, "Come on, let's go play outside." Caitlin put her hands on her hips. Catwoman? Like Halle Berry? I don't think that will work. I'd get in trouble with the PTA for sure. Ava smiled playfully. Don't worry, you will like the costumes I picked out, but you will need the eye makeup or Grace will question you. Can you do black with some brownish colors? Halloween finally arrived along with Ashley. By mid-morning, after sharing some laughs, the three women were busy getting their costumes ready and deciding on makeup. Claude, Clay, and I kept working, unaware of the costuming fun, though the smiles we got at lunch were a hint. The four kids barged into the house, eager to see their costumes and reminding everyone that they needed to be ready by 5:30 for their activities. Ashley and the mothers took the kids upstairs to prepare and advised us men that we needed to be ready by 5 to try on our costumes. If there was ever a sign, that was it. Clay looked at me, concerned. Oh no, what have we gotten into? Luckily, it was a cool evening. My cougar mascot costume with a big headpiece was warm but comfortable. I walked to the entryway carrying my headpiece and ran into Clay, who was in a tight-fitting tiger costume, and Claude dressed as a leopard, complete with a wig and ears. We laughed at each other until we heard the sounds of cats, cougars, and leopards. Ashley really shouldn't wear such snug costumes, but she and Clay made a cute pair. Eva and her kids were leopards, and she looked fantastic even if her outfit wasn't too tight. Caitlin was in a fitted cougar costume with makeup and sparkly eyeshadow. Grace and Doss wore costumes like mine, but with makeup, wigs, and ears instead of a heavy headpiece. If I had to choose, Ashley wins for fun. Caitlin takes the crown for looks, and for elegance, it's Eva. We three men were excited for the Halloween event, hoping to impress everyone when they weren't laughing at us. We played games like popping balloons with darts, tossing rings onto bottles, and throwing baseballs at pins. We enjoyed the bounce house, slides, and obstacle course, which were busy with kids. The seniors organized a haunted house in a big tent, and the junior class hayride seemed to be a favorite among older kids, especially before the dance that started at 10. The women attracted attention, but we men mostly received teasing from those not in costume. As we hoped, it was a community event that brought people from nearby towns. Maybe this strong community feeling would help us during the tough times ahead. We tried everything we were allowed to at the event and stayed for the first hour of the dance. The DJ played a mix of country and popular music, which got people dancing. These kids from West Texas might not know much about hip-hop, but they do love country music, including line dances and swing dancing. We might have stayed longer, but our boys were getting tired. The two 11-year-old girls were getting asked to dance by older boys, while my wife and the other women were happily dancing with men of all ages. Our efforts paid off, as news spread that Dr. Eva and I were behind some of the fun events, and I helped pay for the decorations. We made many new friends and earned goodwill. As November moved closer to Thanksgiving, the atmosphere grew tense. Many signs pointed to a possible attack on January 1st, but the original dates were suggested to be between Thanksgiving and New Year's. We talked about it and decided to take it as it comes. We couldn't stay on high alert forever, especially with the kids home from school for 2 months. The information we had could be wrong, or something might happen that could change their plans. We were as ready as we could be for a surprise attack, so we decided to carry on with our lives and hope for the best. During our regular weekly meeting at the Crescent Moon, the Colonel told us that we were well equipped and prepared, and he should know. Still, the song Bad Moon Rising kept echoing in my mind. I see the bad moon rising, I see trouble ahead. I see storms and danger, I sense hard times coming. Watch out tonight, it could bring you down. There's a bad moon rising. I hear winds blowing, I know the end is near. I fear water rising. I hear sounds of anger and ruin. After the updates on our readiness, the sheriff mentioned that he had organized a Veterans Day event at the courthouse square and arranged for an F-16 to fly over, but interest was low. He asked for suggestions, and an idea came to me. Sheriff, that's only 4 days away. Please stop me if I go too far, but how about we... The event started at 5 p.m. when the DJ from the carnival played the national anthem, ending the patriotic songs and military marches that had been playing for an hour. The Catholic priest gave a heartfelt prayer, and then the sheriff took the microphone. Facing the large crowd gathered on the lawn, he welcomed everyone and introduced Colonel Adams. The colonel looked very official in his full-dress uniform, but it was his strong voice that captured everyone's attention. He immediately began to talk about the bravery and sacrifice of American soldiers from Valley Forge to Afghanistan, sharing a story about his own experiences near the Afghanistan-Pakistan border. He mentioned that he had mixed feelings about going to Afghanistan, knowing we were not invited. However, he came to care for the people there and understood the struggles that women faced. He spoke about their right to choose their paths, about giving boys and girls the chance to learn, and about the courage of children who faced bullying and danger to go to school each day. He told a story about a school that was bombed because it allowed girls to attend, and how many were saved because a boy risked everything to warn his teachers and friends. He paused and asked if Americans still believe in the values that make us great, and whether we still have the courage to do what is right when it matters. Then he sat down suddenly. Clay walked up to the microphone without any introduction and began speaking. My service wasn't as clear-cut and straightforward as Colonel Adams. I traveled to different places and took action quickly, trying to protect our freedom and way of life or support new democracies in other countries. Not all enemies wear uniforms with symbols we recognize. Most do not declare themselves because they are too afraid to be honest about their intentions. Instead, they hide and attack from safe spots, causing harm to innocent people. They set traps that can hurt anyone passing by, making it dangerous for everyone in the area. He spat on the ground near the entrance and continued. There are people who will find these enemies and confront them. People like me. True Americans, true patriots, do not support these wrongdoers. They stand against them and report them. Yes, I mean you. Which are you, friend or enemy? If you do nothing or support those who harm our country, you are my enemy. After he finished, there was complete silence, and then the county judge stepped up to the microphone. Many of you know I came across the river with my family, looking for a better life, and we found it here. When I turned 18, I joined the United States Army through the MAVNI program and served for 10 years. When I joined, I was asked if I had any special skills. I said I learned how to find water from my grandfather. They didn't understand, so I explained it. They laughed, but less than a year later, I was sent to Africa to help find water, drill wells, and provide clean water to the village we were supporting. I did that for 9 years, working all over Africa and parts of the Middle East. You might think that providing clean drinking water is not important or doesn't need bravery, but I earned 2 Purple Hearts. You see, fresh water is crucial for developing nations, and local gangs and terrorists wanted to keep the villagers under their control, so they tried to harm us. In the end, we had a group of special soldiers like Clay with us, which allowed us to focus on our work. I even taught many others, including African men, how to find water before I returned home and became a citizen. Now I serve you as your elected official, just like the sheriff does. We stand together against oppression and those who would take our freedoms for their own gain. I know you are with us. Our final speaker needs no introduction. Even though he is not a veteran, we all know he is on our side against those who want to take away our freedoms for their own purposes. Please listen carefully. I walked up to the microphone and waited a moment, looking around at the audience. I believe everyone here tonight who is over 21 remembers the day when everything changed. If you are younger, listen to the song by Alan Jackson and cherish your family and friends. The sound came through the speakers clearly. Where were you when everything changed that September day? Were you in the yard with family outside, or working away in Los Angeles? Did you stand there shocked at the sight of smoke rising against the clear blue sky? Did you feel anger or fear for your neighbors? Or did you just sit down and cry? Did you feel sorrow for the children who lost loved ones and pray for those who were unsure? Did you feel happy for those who made it out and sorrow for those left behind? Did you feel pride for our flag and the brave ones who did their best even in hard times? Did you look up for an answer and reflect on what really matters? I'm just a singer of simple songs, not really into politics. I watch the news, but I can't always tell the difference between conflicts far away. But I know about faith and talk to God, and I remember this from my youth. Faith, hope, and love are good gifts we receive, and the greatest of these is love. When the last lines of the song faded, I spoke again. In the fall of 2001, we came together as a nation. We set aside our differences and stood united against those who threatened our way of life and our belief that everyone should choose their leaders. It's not perfect, but ask people in places like Russia, China, or North Korea if they would rather live here. Our government creates boundaries to keep people from entering. Their leaders build barriers to contain their own citizens. Without those walls, they would find themselves in deserted towns. I paused for a moment, then looked seriously into the crowd. Yet some of these leaders wish to harm our way of life. Even worse, they have followers here in America, in Texas, in Fort Davis. They might drape themselves in our colors, but they do not support our way of democracy, our laws, or open discussions. They want to force their views on us because they believe they are right and we are wrong. Some desire control, while others want community. Some think they are superior, while others believe in equality. Some want chaos instead of order. Others want to enforce strict rules. Some are wealthy and wish to gain more, while others believe that money causes problems. What they share is a wish to harm our government and way of life, making us follow them. That's all I have to say. Please listen to the words of Lee Greenwood and remember the times we stood together. The DJ turned up the volume, and the music filled the air, echoing through the valley. I went down the stairs to find Caitlin, Doss, and Grace, gathering them close. If everything were gone tomorrow, I worked hard all my life, and I had to start again with just my kids and my wife. I thank my lucky stars to be living here today because the flag still stands for freedom, and they can't take that away. And I'm proud to be an American, where at least I know I'm free, and I won't forget the folks who died who gave that right to me. And I'd gladly stand up next to you and defend our country still today. Because there's no doubt I love this land. God bless the USA. When the last verse started, I led my family to our SUV, and we drove away. And I'm proud to be an American, where at least I know I'm free, and I won't forget the folks who died who gave that right to me. And I'd gladly stand up next to you and defend our country still today. Because there's no doubt I love this land. God bless the USA. We had made a statement tonight. Who knows if it made a difference? Thanks for watching this video. Don't forget to subscribe to Infidelity Plus to stay updated with more captivating tales of infidelity and payback. Turn on notifications so you're the first to see our latest content.